my skydiver's like, we're gonna get to the edge when it's time to go, and I'm the one closest to the door, so I'm the first out.
Yeah, we're live.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're good. So this is going to be kind of a special recording, and it's going to be in two main parts. So the first part is going to be a recap of what has happened prior to us streaming, and then I have a stop point that I'll stop recording, and then we'll record only the recap from the recorded sessions, just so we can kind of keep it separate for those who want to actually listen to them themselves. So, with that being said, I have our very first session here, and writing through this, I've written huge amounts of handwritten notes here on legal paper, no less, and I pick up 4 whole ones, and that's not including John's stuff, which he's going to go through when we get there. But so I figured the format's just going to be free flow. We're going to talk about sessions, anything that you think of, and if you don't think of anything, don't worry about it. I'll just keep reading and keep moving on. But there's some pretty fun stuff bringing back memories. So I figured we'd definitely go through.
Yes, and there'll be new stuff for both of us because
Yeah.
I joined a little later after it started, and then you joined, so there'll be new stuff for us to know.
Yes, to get a little bit more peek behind the curtains. So originally, this group started as sort of let's have people get introduced or reintroduced in some of our cases because it's been so long into playing World of Darkness, specifically Vampire. We talked about Werewolf, Vampire, which one do we want to do? I wasn't comfortable enough to run Mage, again, because it's been so long and it's so complicated. And we wanted to start with something that's a little more quintessential and a little bit easier to manage from a player standpoint. So what I have here, so the players meet the Hound, Reggie Ardog Wilkins. And he's going to be a huge player moving into the future. You guys got your first basic taste of how he talks and how he dealt with the coterie on that, and basically asks the coterie, but at the time just a group and a collection of unaffiliated vampires other than their Camarilla affiliation, tasked them with bringing back a crazy, thought to be Malkavian, unknown clan called the Messiah. So basically, he tells of a park that's on the Potomac that the players need to go to, and just for everybody's information, in my world, the dividing line between Camarilla territory is the Potomac. Aside from D.C., which is like a little peninsula of Camarilla encroachment into sort of the Maryland area, which is solidly Sabat, with their seat being in Baltimore. So right along the Potomac, basically asked for them to go, and this guy has been refusing the prince's summons even, has not announced himself, which is per the rules he has to, and if he's a vampire, that is. And you guys ended up going to this area, and some of the first introductions to kind of the gangrel werewolf situation going on, where the gangrel have been specifically tasked by the prince to hunt down and exterminate any lupines, werewolves, in his territory. So on their way, they see a very large dog kind of chased off by some 2 gangrel that were park rangers that were sort of there to presumably to be on the lookout for such things. They run off immediately to do their own things. The PCs decide not to engage in that particular interaction and continue to focus on their task at hand and finding this Messiah. From GM notes, I did have it was an interaction players could have done and been more involved in. You guys had made chase. There was actually a little combat that does happen. Basically, it showcases a little bit of the werewolves with one werewolf, a Bonar, for those interested in knowing what's going on, that basically escapes into the Umbra and goes along. So,
God, we would have gotten so messed up by that.
Yeah. Well, so that's the thing. Like, you would see the fight with the gangrel, and then you would probably either shoot. You could get involved as much as you want, but the idea was, we were doing an intro game, so a lot of it was admittedly easy mode. But you do interact, and you could have helped the combat one way or another. But we decided to kind of bypass that And instead, we went to where the Messiah was. And you guys remember, because the Messiah also plays a role in the game, and continually pops up here and there for different characters and for different reasons. But his big thing is that there's this major war that's coming, and that we actually need to join together against a greater evil, essentially. And I don't know if you remember, but you guys end up getting him and convincing him to come with you, but not before two La Sombra come out of the Potomac trying to get him as well. So it's like two different parties trying to get him. And the La Sombra come out, and they're both twins. So it's actually the same twins you guys will run into later. So you guys end up basically doing a show of force. There's this intimidation involved, one round, and then they drop a black cloud and they flee because they didn't want any of that noise. But yeah, you guys did talk to the Messiah, and the Messiah did give you some kind of cryptic visions, but one of which is directly involves the it has Megadon Pharmaceuticals symbol. He described Megadon Pharmaceuticals symbol as a part of that. And so anyway, so that was like session 1, /.5.
I had his quote written down here. He said, "Rage has succumbed to fury. Diversity will fill the vacuum."
Yep.
And
So
he referred to the Great Eye at one point.
Mm-hmm.
I have written that same quote down too, actually.
Yeah.
Yep.
The Almighty.
Exactly. The Great Eye Almighty. I don't know. I just wrote down that he was Rasta looking.
Yeah, and he was. He's a
And he
a
predicted
Jamaican, even talks Jamaican, dreadlocks and all. And he would go through and talk to people and kind of yell at them. So for all the prince knew, he was a supernatural. He clearly knew about the vampire's ways, and so basically he said, to this new group that's operating in my territory, seems like it'd be a good starter thing. Have them do it for me. Which they did, and they brought him to the prince, and then the prince basically said, thank you guys for doing that, and basically patted you on the head, send you on your way. So session 2, I have Ardog task the players with curbing gang violence. And this is where it really started, like the whole game really started. And so basically the PCs while patrolling, you responded to an immediate aftermath of a drive-by where blood gang members had fled the scene after shooting up a house, presumably of a rival gang member. And so some of the PCs decided to go, player characters decided to go and make chase, and a few of the others decided to go check on the house and see kind of what was going on, hearing some commotion inside the shot up house. So with that, they found that there were 3 siblings in the house, and one was a late teen brother who had been shot in the chest and was killed. There was also a middle sister who had been shot and was in critical condition. And then there was a younger brother who was completely shaken by the ordeal. The PCs that decided to give chase, they had 2 shooters that they were able to get. There were a total of 3, one of which ended up getting away, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But yeah, does anybody remember that whole interaction? I think there's some couple of important things that would have ramifications later on.
Why did they end up getting away again, Ringo? Do you have an explanation for why we weren't all giving chase? Heinrich too, I think?
Actually, Ringo was sent in to take care of the kids. Him and
Yeah, it
Heinrich.
was me and Ward that were taking care of the kid.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were kind of split on that. Part of the coterie was like, the kid, whatever. And then the other part of the coterie was like, no, we need to go save the kid.
Yeah. It was the first real moral conundrum that hit round in session 2. And well, humanity was on display a little bit.
It was a showing of priorities,
Yeah.
Due to Vincent's
Absolutely.
background, he was more.
Oh God, that's right.
He was more concerned about the kids, but he also knew that with his physical prowess, he would be able to catch up with the shooters quicker. That's what his thought was.
Mhm.
So he I don't want to say instructed or anything like that, but asked Ringill and Heinrich to stay behind to get to check on the children.
Sure. And it ended up saving Tamika's life.
Yes.
Ultimately, and the boy was not injured or anything, just severely mentally shaken. But so that was, and for their part, Ringill and Ward were able to package them up and basically call on. And I should take a step back. In DC, the police department, DCPD, and the various law enforcement agencies from a supernatural side are actually controlled, from a vampire side, are actually controlled by the Baruha. So the Baruha clan as a whole has that sort of niche within this particular vampire sub-society. And so the players have been basically kind of deputized and made official members of the DCPD pretty early on, working directly for Lieutenant Wilkins, R-Dog as he's called. And so that was, kind of an interesting thing. So those that gave chase, though, as I said, did run into two of them. One of them ended up continuing to run, but you guys were able to catch two of them. Subdue them pretty quick. You guys got shot. And if I recall correctly, Vincent got shot specifically, but Vincent does what Vincent does. Didn't have any real weapon other than his fist. The guy shot him thinking, he's going to drop Vincent, in the chest. And for his part, I believe Vincent decided to give him the old 5-finger duster and basically knocked them all out. But that provided a kind of an interesting little role-playing scenario where a bunch of people came out watching from their windows, kind of afraid, but seeing some shooters getting punched by police officers. And so what ended up happening is one of the elder gentlemen, who didn't seem to care too much about his own well-being, ended up challenging and coming out, and by him coming out, others came out and sort of swarmed the police officers and basically demanding that they release him. And demanding that they leave their neighborhood. So that didn't go over too well with a couple of the members, and I believe it was Heinrich who decided he wanted to try and mentally calm the situation down by sort of controlling the main antagonist of your goal here, and his name was Gerald Miller, also known as Chaps.
Is this how that happened?
Yep.
Oh.
He was, yes.
Well, in all fairness, Vincent had hit the crowd with presence to start with.
Yep.
So we had the crowd on its heels,
Yep.
except for this one stubborn old man who was just like, no. Yes, he insisted, you ain't right, you're the devil.
Yeah, because...
You're not going to take my, one of my people.
Yeah. Because he
so
was...
For this entire scene, all Heinrich was concerned about was breaching the masquerade. And it was like, here we are, second session. We've just started a new game. We've got new players, and we're gonna start off on like totally the wrong foot and just screw up the whole game right here. And
could have happened.
So Heinrich runs in, and he's like, oh, I better dominate this guy, take him down a peg, and I just botched the ball.
Oh my
It wasn't just a one; it was a triple botch. If I recall correctly,
botch.
We've
only had that happen one other time to disastrous effects, and we'll go over that.
I don't know if disastrous how I would characterize that.
Well, that
rest
depends
of
on
us
how you
would.
take it. So yeah, basically what ended up happening is trying to dominate him. Heinrich ended up doing this triple botch. And Chaps ended up basically being, for lack of a better word, kind of awakened. Although he's not a mage, he ends up being a hunter. But he basically it sets him on the path to being an imbued, which his whole storyline and something kind of happens later, and the next day, and then he gets officially, he receives the dreams, all that stuff, and Patreon, all that. But it basically awakens him and then sets him against the players to the point where he immediately, and even to his surprise, if you'll remember, activates his true faith, which he had, and basically forcing people to back up. Now, by this point, Vincent and Heinrich had control of the perpetrators, But they still forced them to back up, and basically the rest of the police officers came in force. They got their backup, and the situation ended up sort of dissolving into kind of a racial strife and kind of a unfortunate happenstance where a lot of misunderstanding in this particular case happened, and ended up creating a hunter that would play a role later on, a big role actually.
Fun fact: that scene was the first time that made me decide that Ward needed to pick up technomancy later on. Was because one of the biggest fears, as Heinrich said, was breaching the masquerade, because there we are standing in an alley and we've got this whole group of people who are watching us, and now this old man is chanting the power of Christ compels you practically, and it's actually starting to burn Vincent with ag damage. So here he's got a bunch of cops backing up, and the last thing we need is this weird cell phone footage as we start to see people, like one person standing in the alley took out their phone, so I hit it with movement of the mind to throw the cell phone on the ground as they tried to take it out, because I knew what would happen as soon as they started trying to record. But that got me thinking, man, I need a way to fry these things from a distance.
Well, and to Vincent's credit, he actually stood 2 rounds before he ended up having to back off, because it was starting to hurt.
Yes, it was. So
Wow.
it was definitely
Now I got that backstory.
Yeah.
That was right before I came along.
It was.
So.
Well,
I was
a
so
little, we have
hot
a,
for
we have a
friends.
number
That's
of
where
stuff.
Mr. Hunter
Whoa.
came from.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so in this case, we start, so that kind of ended the second session. Going into the third session, PCs meet Mrs. Thornton, which is Tamika's mom, at the hospital, because you guys ended up, mostly Ringill, but some of the other players decided to go and kind of visit her in the hospital, check in and see how she's doing. And she had been working the night shift, which is why she wasn't there, and she was barely with it. If you recall, she was also stricken by grief, having lost her eldest son to the violence. And unbeknownst to her, there's any kind of supernatural bend to this. So you guys did have those 2 shooters defeated, but one ended up getting away. So that kind of left the question in everybody's mind, hey, where'd they go? How are we going to get them? But let's see here. Barely with it, stricken with grief. Ringill provides her his contact card, which he likes to do, but he did. And that would play a little role later on. PCs do actually form the coterie. So what was the coterie? Yes. Because that was a discussion.
We chose the
As always.
one spiral thing. What was that?
Black Lateralis
Yeah.
was originally our idea. And then
Which I was totally against because I thought it was stupid.
Yeah,
And
Vincent
then-
thought it was stupid.
And then we went on, and then we changed it not too much later than that to the Black Suns, and mostly because it, number one, it fit better, and number two, it sounded way more cooler.
Black Suns.
Yes.
Ostensibly, we can retroactively say that the reason we changed it was because we lost a member and it wasn't the same coterie after that. Because what we did mention at the beginning of all this is we did have a certain photographer Kadif with us for some of these
Heidi.
shenanigans.
Yeah.
Well, she was in an intermittent
kind of in and out.
presence,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
being kind of unaffiliated with.
And
most
she'd come in
of
and play a role later, for the most part. But yeah, she is kind of in the background for a lot of the earlier sessions, and then left, and then only to come back. So Ardog does relate to you guys, though, that the gang violence is a Sabbat cover, thought to basically allow the Sabbat to push deep into DC and make their move, right? So if you recall that, they basically were allied heavily with the Bloods, specifically, and then used that gang violence to sort of, as a spearhead to come in. And so that was the fear from the sheriff at the time, one of the Kennedy brothers. So with that, let's see here. Spot cover to push into DC. Ward tasked with obtaining 3 items as a part of his initiation into the DC Chantry under Magistrate Milius. So he ended up having and rolled in the players into some of these.
Well, some of the other players were otherwise occupied.
Right?
I think Vincent was sleeping off some smag damage or something, and You know, and so Ringel and Ward and Heinrich went on a little field trip.
Yeah. Do you remember what those items were?
To an actual, well, what the coterie wasn't there for was that Ward went around in the middle of the night to catch bats. The hard way, not like you animalism guys with your, I'm going to chat with the animals. Nope, he took off flying.
Squeakers.
Yep.
Squeakers. Squeaking.
He took off flying in the middle of the night in one of the DC's less or more isolated national parks on an island, flying around looking for bats.
Yeah.
And then
rolled well.
Yeah, rolled.
Got
rolled
a couple
really,
of them.
Actually, got 2 bats on that one. But catching them by hand of all stupid ass things. Didn't even think to like bring a tennis racket or something to like swat them. Which now that I think about it, had to look ridiculous. It's just like, get back here. I don't know to be terrified by this flying man or amused by chasing bats.
Chasing bats.
But then,
what would that look like? What is that man doing? He's flying! What do you mean? What is he doing? He's caring about what he's doing. He's flying!
Yeah. But what's he doing? Trying to?
Why does he have a net?
Yeah. What do you think he's going to do with that? I don't know. Fly some more. Then he also had to get the apical meristrum of the tallest tree in the park, which meant he had to go cut the tip top off a tree. Which coincidentally he was already flying because he was catching bats, so that was easy.
Yep.
But the big one that he needed Heinrich and Ringel for, he got a little nervous on this one because and I'll just say as a metagame thing, I did get a little bit nervous because it felt like Aaron was like doing that dum ominous foreboding shadowing,
and it would end up being such.
Rightly so.
Every session.
Yeah, right. That's every session. I have to set everything up. Come on.
Ward was very aware of the presence of werewolves in the DC parks, and when he was told he had to go to one of the national parks to obtain a chunk of masonry from a war memorial or the site of a historical, of a significant battle.
Yep.
So he chose to go to. I want to say that we ended up going to Bunker Hill to obtain like a piece of masonry, big ass chunk of stone, actually Ward didn't do a whole lot himself. We got to the park as intended, got all the way in, nothing untoward happening. Found a nice likely spot of stone, looked around and said, okay, it's dark here, levered that sucker up, and then started hearing howling. So Ward, not having very high strength, but having very high movement of the mind, levitated the rock because he failed his strength check to pick it up in order to run or haul ass back to the car. So he levitated it and was running back to the car with a floating rock behind him. Mm-hmm. While Heinrich and Ringel decided to do their thing with some werewolves.
Yeah, so you ran into one in particular,
played very interesting.
A female that kind of was running through and seemingly following you a little bit to see what you were doing. Mm-hmm. So you did make a little bit of contact with it.
Yes, I rolled some very good charisma and empathy rolls, and managed to stop her from attacking us and ripping us all apart. And
which was certainly, I had her statted out, which was certainly one of the things that could happen, especially if you guys hung around, which you did. And I'm like, ooh.
She's even more standard out now, coincidentally.
She is way more standard out now. Yeah, well, she's gotten almost as much XP as you have.
And I believe she did take a swipe at Heinrich, but I managed to kind of interpose myself and be like, hey, wait, whoa. Yeah. We don't wanna,
It was more than a swipe.
That was later.
Okay, was that later?
That's later, because what ended up happening, well, hold on now, there was.
Okay.
There was a little bit of showing, and kind of like, what, she doesn't know what's going on here, but she also, something was off in her behavior, because as soon as you heard more howls, she got fearful of the other werewolves, if you recall. And that'll play a huge role in that storyline later. Mm-hmm. But, so she basically looks at you guys in terror, and then flees immediately, and another group of werewolves comes by, chases her, except one. That's like, takes its smell in the air, kind of looks over and sees you guys.
Well, so
decides to attack.
Well, in the meantime, I had mastered my fear of heights and climbed a tree and watched them take off after her. Mm-hmm. And after that happened, I came down, then, that other werewolf caught her scent and was like, holy shit, there you go. And so
Now, was that the time when Chubbs was
Yes,
driving and,
absolutely.
and,
Cow.
and thought there were massive cows on the loose?
Big cow.
And he was
Absolutely.
he was sitting there driving them. He gets out to open, because he always got out to open the car door, sees the werewolf, flies into delirium, and just starts running, screaming that the cows are stampeding away. Like, doesn't get back in the car and drive. No. Goes and full-on runs.
This is because this guy has stayed to talk to a werewolf while it's taken Ward a long time to run back, so he's just...
Well, I mean, I
this
made
stupid
friends
thing.
with her.
You did.
I even gave her my card.
But
I think.
because of the delay, the other
He
werewolves
did
showed
give
up.
her... I was going to say that. Like, you gave her a card.
And not for the
Oh,
last
hell, I
time
was
did
leaving
he
my
have
card
the-
around for the bone
And I
knives.
write that shit down.
Uh-huh. This will not be the last time we hear that phrase. And he gave him his card.
Yes.
Yeah, but
Here's our address. Stop by anytime.
like the rest of us are all
There
kind
will
of
be at least one
feet
more
to
of
the
those.
car. And as I rolled up to the car to like dive in the car and like Chubbs, get this thing going, Chubbs. Because I'm looking
Streak in
over
the quad. They're cows, man. They're cows.
well, I'm looking over my shoulder and there's werewolves coming, and I'm yelling, Chubbs, get the car, go,
Get
man,
in.
go.
We gotta get out of here, man.
And he sees the car and he flees for due to delirium. So next thing I know, I think that was Heinrich's first driving shenanigans. As I'm shooting out the window at a werewolf.
Yeah, I
It wouldn't
went
be
out
the last
window
time you
and
guys were
actually
driving
managed to
away.
Get a really good shot on the werewolf.
For all that was the first time we decided never to mess with werewolves because
Heinrich had like
shot.
half an arm hanging down.
Yeah.
Never
Was
messed
it you, Heinrich, that got bit?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't think Chubbs even noticed that I was missing an arm.
Yeah.
Well, that was probably the least of what he's noticed being with you for however many years.
I should talk about that. So,
Yeah.
so Rolando Chubbs is a little, I don't know, 5'8" Italian man, little chubby, hence the name. His story is he's not a ghoul.
It's fucking
He is human, but he's sort of a human wise guy. Like he's paid very well. He doesn't ask any questions. He does the job. That's it. He knows his boss is a little weird, and he just does his work.
He's a retainer, right? Officially for the background? Wasn't he like a retainer, I think?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
And he, so I should have fleshed out his story a little better, but I think I left it open what the reason was that he was not more inquisitive into, vampirism.
That's exactly
going on
right.
with
Hey, boss,
Heinrich's
what's that?
Weird shit.
Here's $100. Right on.
Yeah. All right. You pay me. I don't care. I drive you there. I'll open the door for you.
Why is that guy 8
like
feet
to
tall?
think
Here's
And if there's
$100.
giant stampeding cows, I'm probably going to run for the hills. I don't know why.
Hey, if my boss says it's a cow, it's a cow.
It's a cow.
The urologist in town that I went to for a vasectomy had a giant, gnarly-looking male nurse, and I got to say, it's probably the same philosophy because I asked him why he got into it, and as we're making bedside chit chat here, and I'm like, why would you do this? And he's like, yeah, it's it's for the money, right? So it's probably a lot like a male nurse at a urologist's office. You get paid well enough not to look at the things you really don't want to see that close.
It is what it is.
And with the guy that's missing an arm, there might be maybe some werewolf vampire stuff going on. No problem.
Yeah, you just don't look that closely. That's the important thing.
You don't ask no questions.
Take the paycheck home. Don't look that closely. That's the 2 keys to happiness.
But we had to chase him down and collect him.
Oh my God.
You did, yeah. He was running in the street.
Yeah.
Literally, totally abandoned the car because delirium. And,
Like, hey, Chubbs, get the hell out of the
what are you
car.
doing, man? I'm streaking the quad. I'm streaking the.
And that's where the cows came from. That was the explanation.
They're coming.
Yeah, the
cows
cows.
are coming
He's like,
home.
there was something big. They're like, oh, they're just cows. Like, really?
Biggest fucking cow I've
Okay,
ever
all
seen.
right. They're cows. Yeah, that's weird.
They're really
And
angry.
coincidentally, I did have a little note to myself that I thought you guys would find funny. If for whatever reason you guys ended up finding yourselves in like a pasture or something, he now has a phobia of cows. So I thought you guys would. It never came up, but I thought you guys would appreciate that.
You're a dairy farmer. or something.
Yeah, exactly. He's just like, sir,
It may
I'm
come
gonna
up.
drop
I
you
own a
off."
vineyard now. Maybe it comes up another time.
don't let Chubb see it. So you guys have the fully grown, the wings of a living bat and the stone slab. of historical significance while obtaining the stone. Yep, we have all of that. So, quite an interesting session there. So then we moved on to the fourth session. So the third, what is this? Third blood drive. The third blood drive-by suspect, so he was a blood, is apparently apprehended by Baltimore PD, claiming openly and originally like on YouTube, basically being like, "Hey, they're supernatural. The PD supernatural in DC. This is all total masquerade breach, right?" And so the powers that be, particularly the Sheriff Kennedy, was like, "Yeah, we need to get him." So worked out a deal with Baltimore PD to do a prisoner swap. And in exchange for getting that perpetrator wanted in the slaying of a citizen in DC, they were going to provide DC PD with a Latin King leader, who detainee that they would provide as a full-on armed motorcade exchange. Our dog rolls in heavy and basically sets the coterie up to provide kind of a northern screen from their approach, and you guys end up in your own stuff. You guys end up in a couple of combats. So there's 2 specific ones. So
Jessica's never going to let Ward drive the car again if she hears about this one.
no, this is a good one. It's a good one.
Were we didn't we start off kind of split for this one? I think.
We could have.
I think.
No,
I think.
No, I think
Oh, you were catching up.
Rin-
Yeah, you had to catch up.
Ringo was not there until
We had 2
later,
cars, I think.
if I remember it.
That's right. You did show up later.
Yeah. So you guys end up coming along a parallel path to the main motorcade, essentially, and but then all hell breaks loose. The Sabbat actually completely ambushed the motorcade, and a massive fight does happen. You guys end up defeating one of kind of the groups that was supposed to hit it from the side, and then ended up joining the main group, only to find basically carnage and a staked R-Dog in the passenger side of the SUV that he had, which then led to an engagement with a specific Sabbat pack.
T-Bone in red.
Yeah, T-Bone Red basically come out of the woodwork, and they had a couple people. You guys ended up rolling and saying some interesting things that gave them pause enough for you guys actually to engage in conversation, which I thought was interesting because I have them written down and I have some things like that they know and that they're kind of curious about. But you guys did definitely kind of initiate that, good conversation. And for their part, like you guys were literally like trying to like delaborize, like drink each other and like in the middle of it. And then I forget what happened, but something caused them to stop.
Basically,
Something someone said, I think.
Well, basically, we took down the henchmen more or less. Like I was standing on the roof shooting at people, and then we had Vincent and Ringo were down, and Heinrich were down there fighting toe to toe with them. And at one point or another, there was blood drank on both sides.
Oh,
Yeah,
And it
so they
came
like
down
each
to-
other.
It was a back and forth thing.
Yeah.
It very much came down to a like, well, we could stay here and you guys outnumber us and you'll probably kill us, but then our backup will show up and they'll probably kill you, or we can all leave here alive today. You beat feet.
Yeah.
And, I think it was them realizing they were outgunned. Maybe when Ringil showed up, or when we
Well,
got the
Ringil-
numbers on them.
So Ringil did a kind of a minor masquerade breach at that time because he was shooting at one of the vampires, and one of the henchmen guys was like standing right next to me, and he shoots me, and I soak most of it, I think, and then I just kind of like look at him like, dude, what the fuck?
It's like, this is why you don't shoot a vampire. Something.
Yeah.
You made a comment at them too.
Yeah, I did.
But that was his second one, because the first one was the time we
You look
questioned.
trustworthy. Here's my card.
The first one was the time we questioned
I'll
we
use it,
questioned
too.
the drive-by shooter.
Oh yeah.
And you threatened him by showing him your claws, or
Right.
we're going to show and he tried to play it off as like, that was nothing. That was just
Yeah, and then they said that they the other thing that they did mention was that they felt like this was a setup. Like they felt like they were like something wasn't right about this whole thing, and that was the Sabat saying that.
Mm-hmm.
The Sabat pack was
That's
like,
right.
"What the hell's going? Like none of this makes sense. Why did this happen? Like why are you here in our territory in this?"
I remember
way?
that was one of my insights at the end of that session was that the Sabat knew even less than we did.
Yeah.
Wasn't that also the same gaming session that the people walked up to the window, and I think it was.
Oh, yes, that was the first time I told
Was
someone
that-
to leave.
Oh, it was you. Yeah.
Yeah,
I was
it
like,
rolled down the
either
window.
Heinrich or it was Ward.
He rolled down the window and he's like, "Hey, where you guys leave?" He's like, "Okay." Started walking up.
Yeah,
and
they're gonna like
he's like,
hijack him.
his buddy's like,
No,
Where,
not today.
where are you going? What's bye? He like ran off after him.
It's still not the best use of Dominate, but I'll wait until we get to that one because I know who has that one. But yes, that was hilarious.
That was hilarious.
But what we skipped past Jessica is that at one point Ward was allowed to drive, and we were cruising along
Right.
quietly, shadowing the convoy. And it wasn't that all hell broke loose that made us like fly into action. It was that we started seeing like a lookout on the wearing gang
Yeah.
colors, and
People
throwing
running
high
across
signs
like a
and stuff.
head,
Yep.
like running with like guns, and stuff like that.
You're never
We
driving
get a
your
call on the
vehicles
radio,
ever.
yeah, and the shit starts to go down. And as soon as we see these guys, I'd like
Radio blows
gun
up.
it, yeah. And so I go to ram this dude. I'm just gonna run him down. Like I've got a car, I'm gonna drive over him.
Yeah, that's right.
No big deal until I hit the building instead of him.
Totally missed him. Hit the building.
Completely
Totally missed
Just
him.
Went up on the curb, hit the side of I hit a telephone pole, hit the building, whatever. And did not hit
Crashes
him.
the car.
And then they have to get out and go by foot.
Yeah.
It was like a Corolla or
It was
something.
only-
Also-
it was only- yeah.
Also got massively shot through the windshield by the first gunman, who I did
Oh yeah,
not
he
hit
had loaded
with
the
the car.
clip on you.
Yeah, did not hit him with the car at all. Just got shot. So, have not engaged in that practice since.
So with that, you guys worked with the Sabat. Something weird was up on that, and then you guys basically were like, okay, well, we have to find our own separate way. Like everybody get back to DC because we're technically in Maryland. Go back across the line so that we're protected. And it's all hell's breaking loose, like fires everywhere, gunshots all kind of erupting within like a 3-block area, and so you guys are all like in the middle of it trying to get away. And I remember, so a lot of you escaped to the Metro, and the reason why I say this is because of my game. The Metro is actually kind of a weird spot, and it's something that all the Kindred are informed of when they first check in. One of the main reasons why the Prince wants to make sure everybody checks in with him. Is to let everybody know the Metro is controlled actually by mages of the technocracy, specifically the New World Order.
Yep.
And while that's not going to be common knowledge for all vampires, it is specifically known to this specific sect, and because they're basically saying we control a number of the important governmentary, buildings within DC, as well as the Metro Station. The Metro Station is a non-supernatural, like no supernaturals at all. If you do anything supernatural, we will detain you, and then it will be basically, a black strike on whoever's faction you are part of.
It's
So
like
it's like no man's land.
it's like a all factions Elysium that you can be there, but you will not use your disciplines. You will not use your magics. You will not use your gifts. You are there to use it. That is it. There is no open anything. I would imagine mostly because of the human population that use it, but also, I guess, on all sides, it gives, I don't want to say a safe haven, but a reprieve, a chance to catch your breath and know that you at least, if you get to that point, you're at least safe.
Yeah. So it's also made arterial travel throughout all of DC and into Virginia and Maryland, and so there's other reasons, but the players have not necessarily pulled on that thread too hard. There was a couple of opportunities that ended up not even happening, and we'll talk about that later. But ones where we would have to specifically test that and see how far the players or NPCs would be willing to go, because this is actually pretty widely known throughout most of the entities, the supernatural factions that are in the area, and it also forces other mages that would be from traditional paths to avoid those, like the plague, right? So they're controlling as many of the arterials throughout the the area, allows them to travel fast, allows them to travel their own supernatural form, use their own technology, and all kinds of fun stuff. If players or NPCs reach that, things happen. So anyway, so some players escape through the metro system, which is why I brought it up. And then other player, Ward, ends up trying to test his flight. Gets a little ways away.
They didn't see that, though. They didn't see the last part where I didn't make it all the way.
Didn't make it all the way, and then lands and runs into...
Well, that was much earlier. In my defense, Vincent, laughing your ass off. Rusty's over here laughing. In my defense, it sounded like such a cool way to exit. I'm like, guys, you beat feet, but that way, I got our dog. I can fly him and me, and we can get safely back to Maryland, and they'll never see us go, and it'll be great, and it'll sound cool, and he'll owe us one, and then we don't have to. And we had no idea that we were going to get to the subway. We had no way of knowing it. We didn't have a functioning car for some reason due to a telephone pole. I don't know. So it just so happened, though, that my willpower, which is the main attribute that's used for blood magic, like flight, was a lot lower back then. And was not enough to sustain continuous use of the ability after a certain number of turns. So at some point I made the decision to land because I was risking plummeting. And as I'm sneaking through a back alley, I bump into some Rastafari-looking motherfucker. As our dog described him originally, the Messiah, who proceeded to then jauntily escort me down the middle of the street the rest of the way, like it's, no big deal.
Nobody attacked you.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Which Ward later learned, after he picked up Obfuscate himself, learned that this was clearly a demonstration of, level 5 Obfuscate, of him cloaking me as well as himself. But at the time was just awestruck by, this is great. I mean, what the hell? It seemed like some sort of divine gift. Very timely. And so... the Messiah also left him, and the Messiah, who supposedly had been shown to the sun or was dealt with, we had thought he was dead.
Yeah, you guys, that's a great point.
Still tried to sell me on this.
Our dog was like, the prince put him out to the sun because he wouldn't answer any of the questions, he wouldn't do anything, and he wouldn't basically bend the knee, kind of thing. And so ultimately, because of all the things that had happened, he's like, okay, then we'll see how, if you're not going to play by our rules, then I'm just not going to deal with you in my city. I'm not going to have you stirring everybody up and causing all kinds of chaos and having everybody sing Kumbaya with the Sabbat. You die. And here he is.
And he left Ward away to contact him, which he ended up doing the one time later on.
Yeah.
Turns out the prince almost shows people the sun a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
There's a whole side of that too.
Yeah, I think you might have missed some of that. We'll talk about that big time. So with the let's see there, coterie briefed. So the next session. So we end there. Everybody does happen to skate back over to the Virginia line and eventually meets up. The coterie is debriefed immediately. And basically, you come to find out that the sheriff and the prince basically had wanted the Sabbat to attack, and the Latin king leader they basically made sure that he was dead, and that it was kind of its own way trying to stir up gang on gang violence. So they're trying to basically say, look, the gang slaughtered this, we had a prisoner, other gangs attacked, and so, by the way, the Army National Guard was called in at this point. They're starting to spool up different entities to say, hey, we actually have a legit gang war that's completely erupted, and it's a way that they wanted to use the gang violence to kind of counter the incursion of the Sabbat. They were trying to use the gangs to try and get and infiltrate into deep into Camarillo. So sort of a counter to that. But basically, you would come to find out that the Nosferatu were even able to get the third blood gunman and basically execute him in the sewers and then left him because he was a liability. They weren't going to play any of that noise, and he disappeared forever. So you guys are kind of that was, I don't know, kind of got the feeling that you guys were feeling like that was a little dirty move, and you weren't quite expecting that.
Yeah.
Because it was sort of we specifically set them up, and it did encroach into their territory, they attacked what we wanted, and then we basically made it so much worse for them.
In Vincent's mind, and to his defense, the reason why he didn't tug too much at that thread was back in the, again, goes along with Vincent's background. He was a mob boss. That's something totally something the mob would do. So he was like, I could see that kind of thing, and didn't really pull too hard at it. But at the same time was like, yeah, but we're an infrastructure that we answer to a matriarch that wants to know everything.
Patriarch.
All the patriarch,
Yeah.
patriarch who
That'll
wants
be
to know
Boston.
everything all the fucking time.
Yeah.
You know, so he was kind of like, but at the same time, he's like, I would have done that kind of thing.
Yeah. So you kind of understood it, but it was
Yeah.
sort of like ooh, that's what happened?
Yeah.
I was
And it
not
kinda made
happy
sense.
with, Ward was not happy at all with being the bait in that particular endeavor, though.
Yeah.
Right.
That was his, I mean, he understands pragmatism, which is great, but you use pawns. You don't use your knights
Yeah.
for that kind of shit.
Right.
No,
As far as
exactly.
Ward sees it.
Yeah.
Yep. So
We thought we were the
and then-
knights, but
We're at
actually
least
we're the
the
pawns.
Yeah, Heinrich's like, I'm no knight, I'm a queen. I'm a rook.
Rooks at best.
I'm a rook.
Bishop, please.
Bishop, please. And then, so this is where we actually meet Jessica for the first time. So Jessica enters and basically is right next to Sabrina Williams, who we can talk about, but basically she's a character that did kind of evolve through the whole chronicle. It started off as being super. So she's a Toreador, 9th gen, and she basically is Ardog's assistant. And for his part, she's very quiet. So she's a very petite, very thin, African American female, and she's very much like her art style is in like paperwork and doing like that's her quote unquote art, like is having databases, formulating data, and then creating basically dossiers or whatever kind of paperwork. So she has sort of a unique love of hers and a skill set. Obviously makes her ideal for being kind of the paperwork side of things. But she's very much like none of her disciplines were geared towards combat at all. Everything was social. All of her, her skill sets were much more into like computers, investigation, that sort of thing. So she wasn't, certainly not a combat monster, the opposite of a combat monster in every way you can imagine.
As was Jessica when she first entered the coterie. She'd never done combat. That was not a
Welcome to
thing
Black
in the
Suns.
so that was not a thing in the affluent New York neighborhoods, and she'd been moving throughout the East Coast. No, she was in good neighborhoods and good circles, people, upstanding citizens, so to speak, at least
Yeah.
on the surface.
On service.
So yes, and then she meets the Black Sun.
All in DCPD's main headquarters, and all when a representative, Smith, came in, who turns out to be the Malkavian Primogen, comes in with a still not technically officially released from the hospital, Tamika Thornton. Tamika Thornton is the girl that had been shot up in the blood violence when they had done the drive-by. And so, he was basically using her as a piece to gain kind of public support and wanted to recognize the police officers, you guys, who had rescued her and then were also directly involved in this recent prisoner exchange that ended up in a bloodbath, but you ended up saving, one of the lieutenants and a number of other people through your heroism. So he wanted to basically get a good photo op. It's the first time you run into him. He'll have a lot more to do with things later, as in the next part of the story. But he is, comes in, basically gives you all a coin, which is another thing that you guys end up looking into and being, wait, what the fuck is
2
this?
coins in Ringles, okay?
Yeah,
Well, it's 2 coins now.
ripped it in half.
Oh, yes.
Because you're trying to destroy
Right.
it. So here's the
Cut it
thing,
in
and
half.
this wouldn't come out till later, but let's go ahead and talk about it, right?
Ward never forgot about the coin. Since the minute
Right.
that Aaron brought up the coin, I was sitting there going like, motherfucker, what is this coin all about? Because then we went off in a completely different direction. So as soon
This was
as
like This was like months later in game or in the sessions, like 10 sessions later.
I will have you know that as soon as I took over telling the story, on the side, one of the things that Ward was, I was emailing with Aaron back and forth just to kind of stay involved in the back, give him a reason to be gone, honestly. One of the first things I asked was like, well, Ward's going to take this coin and like, because Timothy the Malkavian showed up, I'm like, I'm going to go show to this occult, Malkavian and be like, dude, what is up with this coin? Because I tried to use my mystical aspects of power on it to view the damn thing. Suspicious as hell.
And so one thing you cannot do with this coin is they can't seem to ditch it. So even if they're thinking about it, even if they're looking at it and they're like, I put it down in this drawer and lock it, subconsciously, as soon as they look away, their hand basically goes, unlocks it, pulls it away, and puts it back in their pocket. Like that's how that
We gotta save that for later, though. That's way later.
That is way later. But they wouldn't know that. All they know is that they got this coin.
Yep. Later on, as soon as I asked him about it, his first response was, "It's in your pocket," and I was like, "Okay, well, I'm gonna go on this other errand, and I'm gonna try and leave it in my room at the Chantry, and I'm gonna go do this other errand, and then later on, I'm gonna check my pocket, and sure enough, the damn thing's still there. I don't remember putting it in my pocket, but it's still there. So we've been, in theory, in the background, in Aaron's plotting little brain, we've been carrying this coin around this whole time, even though we don't know it as players. Yep. If we had asked him at any point, hey, do I still have that coin on me? He'd be like, absolutely, you
do. Which is exactly what I did with you.
Yeah.
So, yes, the coin. But anyway, so they get the coin, and they meet the Malkavian Primogen, Representative Smith, they do the photo op, et cetera, and then, basically, the politician basically like, okay, I'm done, thank you guys, and then leaves. And so there's Tamika basically in, like, cast form, still with, like, a chest tube, and, still hooked up to shit, like, how the hell do I get home? So Ringil goes and orders her a Uber. And the Uber comes with a red-headed Caucasian, a ginger, that basically comes in, accepts him. He rides back to the hospital with them and has just no unremarkable conversation or whatever. And then they go about their separate ways, and we end that session. So the next part, the coterie was tasked with solving a vampire serial killer mystery who poses a threat to the masquerade. The calling card is that the limbs are warped, basically wherever there should be kind of a straight run. It is basically formed and warped into a 90-degree angle. All four limbs are done that way. And then it has two sets of bite marks, and the person left there, so not licked and completely drained of their blood. And they find them this way, wherever they find them. And there's a number of them, apparently, starting in Maryland and then shifting over to the Virginia side. Sheriff is livid, wants to absolutely take care of this, and so by extension, our dog is livid and wants to absolutely take care of it. And his favorite little group of what is it? What does he always say? Vanilla wafers. His little box of vanilla wafers needs to take care of this on his behalf. And so, you guys. Let's see here. PC's examined. So there's a case file, but it's all over the place. And I think Jessica, one of the first things you really pulled into, you pulled in your contacts, saw if there, any more information. We're able to pull a little bit more information. But you were able to really look at the files. It was sort of like a puzzle. I wanted it to be more kind of a cerebral, thing where I'm like providing you with a bunch of names and tests or everything's sort of scattered. But eventually, you figure out there's some.
Yeah.
Because
that's what Jessica was supposed to be good at.
Mm-hmm. And was.
She did some investigating.
Yeah.
Yes.
Remember she showed up with a taser? A taser.
Yeah, that's right.
A taser.
She's from New York, man.
Exactly. I go to lounges with creepy old men.
And after that last scene just now, can I just point out that we asked you before we left looking for the serial killer, we had the the permission, from the cops. They're like, yeah, do you want to go down and we can get you a gun, we'll get you whatever. Hey, just the last mission, we were carrying MP5s around. You want to go get something bigger than that taser? And you're just like, no, I don't need guns, silly. And then flash forward to this. I don't need very big guns, apparently. Just
Dude,
one.
no shit.
Yeah.
Ain't that some shit?
That's absolutely true.
That's
funny.
I don't need a gun. Takes out the big bad nest.
Fast forward.
Just most of the gun
Full
out
month.
pocket,
Bang.
I guess. At least you didn't try to tase him.
Funny. But yeah, so do you remember some of the details? with
Yeah, I
regards
mean,
to
I
the
remember
pattern?
that it was, well, actually, I do have my notes here, but it'll take me forever to go through them and to find it. But basically, we found out there was a pattern that became very clear once things were organized. It was arranged by a name. For one thing, it was the surname, I believe,
It
that
was both. It was first name
first
and
name,
last
first
name,
name and last name, right?
with the same letter. And it
Yep.
started with AA,
A.
then BB,
Right.
went all the way down. Now there's some missing from the file.
Which we were able
But
to
by
see
date,
once we had that pattern. Yes.
You had enough of them in different parts to see that
Yes.
they were a month and a day apart.
So we knew kind of what we were looking for
Almost
at that point. as far
ritualistically
as-
or like an obsessive compulsive person.
Which is also
Which
what
is
we
very
found
serial killer-like, yes.
one of Vincent's ancestors attached.
Yes, so that would come in. That would come in here in a little bit.
Do you
We'll
know
get
I
into
didn't notice that they were all alliteration names until you said that? And I went back, I was like Fred Fulton, Nick
Yeah.
Noelo, Ebony Emerson. God damn it, Aaron.
that. Yeah. And then,
Isabella Isadora.
unfortunately, later on, we'll find out. Well, I'll get
Isn't
there.
that a
We'll get there,
Stan
we'll get
Lee
there.
thing?
So,
Right.
yeah, so you guys end up like pulling around. You're trying to figure it out. So, let's see here. Calling the car, the files are out of order and many likely missing victims. And you guys currently were at TT. So the last one you had is just before T that you can confirm. Coterie follows the lead to an island on the Maryland side of the Potomac. So basically, you guys get a lead, and I forget the details of that. I was trying to
We
rack my brain.
triangulated the cell phone signal.
Ah, that's what it was. That's the piece that I was missing.
Yep.
So, and thank you. Triangulating the cell phone signals from the last victim, you got to go to this island, and basically once you park there, so you got off the bridge, went into the parking lot, and right away you guys see a wolf. And basically the wolf departs. Now what happened is that was actually Sabat, wasn't a werewolf. That was one of the gangrel of, well, we'll talk about it later, but basically one of the gangrel anti-tribute that would run off and inform the other gangrel that there was some vampire interlopers that were encroaching. So you guys ended up going in, and what's up, Mike? Yeah, so yeah, we have Husbands, Dad, and Gaming says, yo, Aaron. So this is one of my oldest buddies, and we played. He's the one that played in the World War II campaign.
Same one we did?
Yeah.
Okay.
So a number of other things too. So anyway, awesome to see you, man. But yeah, so we have this. You guys are on this island. There's these wolves there, or a wolf that runs away. You guys make chase a little bit, but then you've come across a whole graveyard. It's basically like makeshift wooded, carved wood, very ornate actually, headstones essentially, but made of wood, and even showing different religions around them.
But we also noted it was perfectly symmetric as well.
Mm-hmm.
Interestingly
It's
enough,
perfectly
only,
spaced, perfectly depth.
Yeah,
Everything.
very obsessive compulsive.
only 25 spots though. So what letter did he skip at the end? Was he going to skip Z or was he going to skip X?
Right. How is that going to look?
Right? Because I've got the 5x5 grid drawn out with all the names
Yeah.
and the question marks, and we were on TT. So I was like, oh, wait a minute, there's a missing letter.
Who the hell would ever be named ZZ though?
I don't know. But who was Quentin's last name? What was his last name? Quentin Quingler or something? Like,
So we can go into that
Quinkleberry?
a little bit. We can go into that a little bit because there's some stuff that comes to light, and then we can go into that in the next recording. But yeah, you guys ended up finding that. You actually dug up a couple of these graves to find a lot of the blood actually had been not ingested but maintain, and almost like some of the artifacts and stuff were there, which is why you got the
For
cell phone
souvenirs,
thing.
yep.
So, which was a brilliant move. I remember I was like, oh yeah, well, I mean, the person had a cell phone, so yeah, you could. I mean, they can do that. And you get the general area, and then you go and search the area and see what you can find. So, yes, you ended up finding that. But then your investigation. So you guys called our dog. You guys were like, all right, we gotta have you guys come in. And then you heard the howling.
Yeah.
So our dog came as fast as he could. You guys ended up in a combat with Sabat, Gangrel, and Tutribio. A whole group of them, a whole pack of them came. Basically attacked you. So that's where you enter Rory, right?
And three ghoul dogs.
Yep.
Yep, the ghoul dogs that tried to run you guys down, and did run you guys down. So ultimately, this was a tough one because I'm looking at it and I'm like, there's certainly a way they could escape, but they have to leave like right now. So the plan was that you guys were just going to leave. I was expecting you guys to leave, but you guys were like absolutely hell bent on keeping Rory, what did you do to Rory?
You threw him up the tree.
I may have hit him with movement of the mind, hoisted his ass off the ground, and impaled him on a tree.
Impaled him on a tree, which is technically wood, right?
Yep.
So,
staked him
his ass to a tree,
impaling him on
a living tree.
But then apparently used too big of a tree and had some difficulty trying to get him off.
Yeah.
To get the branch, because we wanted to get.
What's your
the
strength,
whole
by the way?
branch. Well, it's a 1 normally, always, pretty much, most of 99.999% of the time.
Yeah.
Technically, I can use movement of the mind at a 5, but I can't boost it past that like Vincent can with potence. And 5 was not enough to wrench this massive tree branch.
But didn't Vincent? I thought Vincent did try and got a branch, but not the one we needed, and snapped it. I thought
you were busy with.
You were dealing with like the
You were dealing with the
Was
ghoul
I?
stuff.
Yeah, you were dealing with the dogs.
Okay.
Turned out to be pretty vicious combat with the dogs.
Yeah. Gould picket canaries or whatever. Yeah. So they were Rottweilers, Rallies.
Yeah. Wait till you meet Thor.
Yeah. So you guys ended up not running, and our dog did try to come and rescue you, but then he actually met Jonathan Drake, and the two of them went at it initially, and basically our dog's like, I can't take this guy. We got to go now. Like, I can tell this guy is way beyond me, and for his part, he had to leave, leaving you guys presumably to be destroyed and devoured and diablerized by the Sabbat and lost into slavery or whatever. But that didn't end up happening.
Nope.
What happened?
Oh, so we were going to get tied up and secured and put into a box van, but thanks to Vincent's presence, he said that's not necessary. And they listened.
You had a really good roll.
I did have a good roll.
Yes.
Vincent had a good roll.
Yes.
He had a fantastic roll, actually.
Yeah.
And they're all
I'm like, well, damn.
Yeah.
Sometimes as a DM, you're like, I'm seeing this really good roll, and you're like, well,
yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, they were like, no, hands behind your. Well, no, we kind of like you. No, you're okay. Go ahead. You're all right. Get in there. And kind of ushered us in there. And as we got ticking back to Jonathan Drake's, I don't know where you
ranch
wouldn't
type
call that.
thing.
Yeah,
Kind of a mansion.
compound,
Yeah, it was a mansion in sort of the southeastern part of Maryland.
It was more
basically in the
rural,
wooded
yes.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like wooded. Like, there certainly are neighbors, but you know, there's definitely like, you know, it's
kind of wide
like
open
4-story,
spaces.
you know, with the basement.
Yeah.
You're probably, you know, 100 feet, maybe a little bit more from the next door neighbors, with certainly, you know, trees and shit between you guys.
Sure. And as they opened up the back door, even Jonathan Drake was very surprised that we were not. I mean, I think he even mentioned that. He said, "Why are these guys not handcuffed and bound?" They're like, "Oh no, they're good. They're cool.
They're
blah,
cool,
blah,
man.
blah."
They're cool.
And he's just kind of like, "What? WTF, guys? Why do I pay you?" kind of thing. And they, unbeknownst to Vincent, quite possibly, I think Jessica and maybe Heinrich. I don't remember who, but who all was he trying to make the deal with? Was it you?
Oh, he
Not me, because I did not take any of the blood
Right,
that
you
was
missed the
offered.
very
Remember that.
Who
crucial
took
point at the
blood? So-
beginning. he offered us refreshments from silver
From
chalices.
the silver chalice.
Right.
Right.
And before any other major conversation took place, it was all that good old boy Southern thing where he's like, "Oh yeah, come in, have a cool glass of lemonade / human juice," and two of us
Human
drank the
juice.
blood.
Mm-hmm.
Some of us were a little bit low.
That's
from
right. So
staking people.
some of us were a little low on the blood and did not partake in the blood offered. Vincent, knowing and we did make, I believe we did make occult rolls for this, and Vincent did make the no, that's not good. That's blood bounding kind of shit. No, don't do
Sure.
that. And I believe he passed that on to at least Jessica, I'm sure, but Heinrich for sure. I'm sure he said that to them. I mean, or at least kind of thing.
No,
like-
the only reason she didn't was she thought it was human blood.
That's right.
And she can only drink
Yeah.
from certain kinds
That's
because
right.
she's
The
venture.
adventure.
And I think Ben was probably the
Selective.
same. So we're
Yeah.
selective.
Yeah. You get
So it was
selective
like, no thanks.
Ringo and Ward were not as selective.
But
No.
yeah, Ringo and Ward were not, and they were like, "Yeah, let's do it."
And so, from my perspective, from a GM perspective, I was thinking, well, it's a great way to test. I mean, if these guys are willing to parlay, and it would turn out he has his own prerogatives, his own goals, way independent from the Sabbat. If you didn't notice that,
Oh, yeah.
he does. His thing was like, well, the only way I can trust him is if I can blonde bomb them, and then I'm going to use them because I have an immediate need. Do you guys remember what that immediate need was?
I was not privy to that. So.
Yeah, because you didn't drink.
'Cause
So
I
the
didn't
only
drink.
the two that drank were kind of, the others were sort of, they were talked and they were for their part, respectful, as guests in the house is what I think they said. Jessica was even pointed towards, an elderly couple that owned the next door neighbors that she could go and feed, and she did. And she also called our dog to let them know where you were
Yes.
for extraction. But the gangrel sort of let that happen. But yeah, so if you guys don't remember, I can prompt you.
oh no.
Okay, what was the deal?
That is how we got all wrapped up in Megadon in the first place. Is Jonathan Drake.
Megadon Pharmaceuticals is officially in the can and everything, a part of Pentex, which is actually the whole werewolf line of storytelling, and one of the main antagonists there. However, I rolled them in because
So if I remember correctly, he wanted us to search out this particular Black Spiral dancer at this Megadon facility and either capture or kill him or sneak in a team of Drake's people to take him on.
That was the big thing, yeah. It was we could kill him if we wanted, but really all we had to do was find him and then let Drake's people know where he was at and kind of help him sneak into Camarilla territory.
yes, so he needed Megadon facility, deep in Camarilla territory. He wanted a ringer. He wanted you guys to be in there and either help him get in there, or get in there yourselves and do it for him, and then he would provide you guys basically with the boon. Is essentially how that worked, right?
Some big Black Spiral named Deathclaw, apparently.
Yeah. And so you guys ended up sort of agreeing, essentially. Kind of liking the way it sounded. The other thing too, he kind of alluded to, or if he didn't, I'll give you the peek behind the curtains. Is he had actually he was working actively with other werewolves of unknown tribe and stuff, but he was working with werewolves and trying to gain a little bit more of their favor in doing this particular task. So he's sort of on the side of the Messiah, actually, if
I didn't know he was
tying
working
all
with
that
werewolves.
together.
I was just going to say, this sounds like stuff Ringo will be very interested in.
Right.
To tell on us, absolutely.
Yeah. Ringo did like to talk about vampire shit to other supernatural. It's just the way he's very open and sharing.
I'll have you all know, just as a side note, John and I have literally talked about this through text. And we're like, seriously, at the same time, we're like, Ringo, that motherfucker.
Better not say
Oh my god, he better not. He just
Oh my god, he just did.
John would be like, did you hear what he just said? No. And he like repeated me like, motherfucker.
And I wrote it all down.
And yet our characters on the screen are posting it.
Legit.
And I have not played. I have not played the player knowledge card yet. I even told John, I was like, dude, if Vincent ever finds out what the fuck Ringo's doing, oh my god.
Oh yeah, some of that stuff where you're having the side chats. I'm just like, now's the time for me to go to the bathroom. Because I'm going to have to then have a character moment of like not knowing all this stuff.
Well, now we can talk to Riley and just see when their friendship started.
Well, we knew we had a chat with the werewolf. We didn't realize he was handing out business cards.
She didn't recognize
right?
or his name.
I just love that.
I think you guys brought it up one time.
Can I just say, Cedar, that I love that you leaned into the business card thing.
I do.
Because it became...
It's actually like played out though.
But as we're going back through it and remembering how many times he handed it out,
But how many times have they
how
called
many.
him back and then it kicked off something else?
It did.
But the point being is like,
Just saying.
if you asked me to recall how many times he's done it, I would have told you like the one or two most recent. But now that we're going back through it, I'm just like, oh my god, that's right. He's just like, what did he go to like Kinko's and get like a whole box of these?
Well, they're buying you less than like 250
Exactly.
cards or something like that.
That's
Like,
actually true. I have business cards.
legit, me too, right?
That's what you got to do when you're a private eye. You got to
At
get your
some
name
point,
out.
Right,
Really?
because that's your
Jordan had an
clientele.
actual thought of
You
like,
gotta-
Jesus
that's
Christ,
your
do
culture.
you keep a box in your trench coat or something?
I always keep a whole like toy on me at one point.
Exactly.
The whole box.
So then the other part of that was a certain hunt.
Yes, that's
And
right. So
I actually personally enjoyed that aspect. But go ahead.
I'll bet you did.
So that
I
night,
enjoyed a lot of it.
Dress code especially.
Jonathan Drake invited the coterie to a hunt. Now, the only person who took part in it is Vincent because he's got no shame in getting naked, wherever the fuck he's at. He don't care. They all kind of stripped down to the skivvies and went out on a hunt. This particular hunt ended up teaching Vincent the first thought in Protean, which allowed him to use the night sight ability that usually comes along with, in this particular case, the glowing eyes drawback. But it still has come into a lot of useful times for Vincent. And like I said, it had no shame getting naked. He didn't care.
Yeah. Well, and then we went through like how to shift the blood to your eyes to
Yep.
do the
Went through the whole
dark vision,
Yep.
the glowing eyes.
Went through the whole course of it, and since then he picked it up and used it quite often. It became a very useful tool for him, which in turn gave Vincent the idea that Jonathan Drake wasn't a bad guy. He may be misunderstood.
No, and he did even also talk to you. So he doesn't follow humanity. He follows a specific other path that
Sure.
he went into, and it's not a traditional. It's more just like straight predatory
Right.
path. So it's not just straight. I want to destroy the world and devour all humans. It's more there's a natural order to things, and we are predators, and we have our place,
Right.
and then we will act in predatory ways. And so anyway, so it's kind of I got to showcase that off because someone ended up you ended up
Right.
playing along and going along with it.
In which Vincent did take to heart that to Vincent, Jonathan Drake was not the human predator that other Cainites and or werewolves or any other supernatural faction would take him to be. It was more of, like you said, to Vincent, Jonathan Drake was basically at the top of the food chain. Like, hey man, this is what we do. This is our place in nature.
Yeah.
This is us. Not this other kill everything sort of thing, and not this hippy dippy
Yeah.
be one with Gaia
again.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so in that particular night is when Vincent decided that Jonathan Drake was not a quote unquote bad guy. He just no one wanted to stop and listen to him.
Doesn't mean that you're a
Bad guy, exactly. He wanted to give him the, hey man, he's just doing his own thing, leave him alone kind of deal.
Yeah. And for his part, he seemed to like the coder. And he understood that you guys were going to call. He didn't give you guys much of a, he also wasn't terribly afraid of the Camarilla.
And that showed.
He was kind of like, he was just like, okay, I have my own goals. I'm not a part of them. I'm not in the city. I'm doing my own thing out here. And, even what you would find out later is he's actually estranged from the Sabbat in, the bishop and the bishops in Maryland. So, anyway, but that brings us to kind of our next session where Ardog rolls in Hetty, extracts the coterie without incident. There's no fighting, no nothing. They just roll in. Armored SUVs, they had all the automatic weapons. They were rolling in as DCPD hardcore, and then you guys just immediately got in. They drove away, no attacks, no following, no nothing. You guys went across the bridge back in the Virginia side, and all was well. So let's see here. Ardog Strax, PCs get.
I'll tell you what the next thing was.
Break. Based on a missing persons report in Northern Virginia with a female having been stalked by a creepy Uber driver.
Yeah, but what was the important event that happened in the car?
Yeah,
They kind of
set off
a little
a lot of later things that didn't become so many. Because he wouldn't have known that whole side if you didn't. So you spend a willpower.
I will just say that having been dragged down into the bowels, both Ringel and I being dragged down into the bowels of Camarilla headquarters in DC, to have scary ass Nosferatu, come in and drain all our blood. That was a little bit, I was like, I don't know if I'm going to see this character again.
Yeah. We'll talk about that.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, as soon as we got in the car with our dog, that was the very first thing, because being Premier, my clan weakness is that as soon as I take one drink of blood, it's double bloodbound.
Double bloodbound.
So I'm not just a little enthralled, I'm really eager to help. And so as soon as I sipped from that cup, I was just like, dude.
He really liked... But then he really fucked him.
Well, so I spent willpower to ignore it so that I could act against him, not necessarily to harm him, but to... The way I perceived acting against him was he asked me not to tell anyone.
That's right, you did spend a willpower.
Yep. So in order to tell anyone, that was acting against what he wanted. So I had to spend the willpower, and I immediately Aaron. I got a shitty roll, and so Aaron gave me Bob, we had a baby, it's a boy moment. And so I did a Bob, and he made me do it live of oh my god, this is
yeah,
and I'm bloodbound.
Yeah.
And
a bloodbound.
Yeah. Drake wants us to go get a werewolf. He's at Megadon, and I drank the blood, and now I'm bloodbound. Oh god! And then I just sat there and was just oh god, what did I do? Yeah. What did I do? Yeah, Drake's such a nice guy. Oh God. So from there, our dog just does the first of many our dog looks, where he just looks at us motherfucker.
Right.
Not as bad as you, but next level almost.
That's coming.
And then he proceeded. We did do some homeopathic cured the blood bond moment of dragging Ringo and I down to the basement. The rumor has it, supposedly, that if you drain all our blood and put us into torpor for a long ass time, that'll work.
Yeah.
And then apparently there was a break in the case or whatever that they decided, nope, bring him back up.
Bring him back. So they ended up finding a lady had made a claim to a police officer in a certain area right next to the airport, where they're, basically the Uber driver had taken her a strange route, taking her to a warehouse area, and she had fled, found, by luck has it, a cop car, and she basically said, she tried to report it. The cop didn't take any major details, and just took her home. And so you guys ended up doing kind of a lot of, little, finding out who this lady was, blah, 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 and that is when you find out it is your great-great-grandniece.
That's right.
And let's see if we can find it here. So nudge the PCs deploy to the listed address.
Arlington or Alexandria?
Huh?
It's either Arlington or Alexandria.
It's Alexandria, south of Alexandria, actually.
Yeah.
Because it was the next town and slightly down. So Michelle Moretti is the name. She even has the last name.
Yep.
So, you guys deploy to that address, and you guys look around. You come to this house. There's no lights on, no nothing. There definitely seems to be a security system in play, including active cameras, which was actually directly gone to the serial killer's setup. So he was watching once you guys tripped that.
And
That's who called the police on you guys to try and frame you for that murder. By the way,
I was not there at all.
right?
What the heck was I out doing?
I don't know, man.
I don't know.
Stretching my mind trying
Probably
to
going to pant after Jonathan Drake.
But Ringo was definitely there.
getting his
So
lips ready.
yeah.
Getting that throat.
I was just trying to think. There was nobody else missing. It was Heinrich, Ringo, Jessica, and Vincent.
So you guys all kind of surrounded the house. You went through the back, entered it, but you tripped the alarm because of a failed roll there. But on your way, though, you also saw there was a familiar-looking, old-school 1950s like Chevy in the garage.
Yeah.
It's a detached garage. And you like looked over and you're like, that looks like shit. That looks like my old car, kind of thing. Or yeah. So another kind of link to it, and I think it was then that it actually dawned on you that, hey, holy shit, this might be some. So like that forced you to sort of be like, well, we gotta fucking find it, you know.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it was MM. So by that time, you can surmise that, you know, she had been long dead. But you know, he had caught up a series of murders pretty fast. However, you guys did see that you went in, and it felt like something was watching you. It felt like something was following you, and it felt like something was guiding you upstairs.
Yeah.
So you go in, you open up, and you find her murdered, warped, same calling card, decaying on the bed. Pretty advanced state of decay. What happened?
So it turns out that the victim was a great niece of Vincent DiMoretti's. Vincent freaks the fuck out. He fails his frenzy roll, and he starts just going bug nuts. I don't remember exactly who it was who ended up doing it, but
That guy. Several times.
that's right. Heinrich. That's right. Heinrich was up there with him.
Heinrich's like, "Don't do it, buddy."
Yeah, exactly. He got that look of,
do it,
oh
buddy."
fuck.
Shit.
Don't. And Vincent had to actually expend 2 willpower rolls to. The first one he expended to not go into a frenzy to tell Heinrich, stake me, I'm about ready to freak the fuck out.
Fucking out.
And Heinrich failed to stake him.
Right.
And he's like, he's finally like, no, I'm not fucking around. Stake me because I'm gonna freak out and kill everybody. And Heinrich was
At
like,
that time, you were the only major combat monster. In the
I
world.
was absolutely,
Yeah.
So it would have been tough to stop you. Even Ringo wasn't a combat monster.
absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so
Dodging
on the
maybe,
second
I don't
time, he was able to stake him and brought him downstairs.
So they had staked Vincent. And they're like, where are we going to put him?
Yeah, let's paint this whole picture. Vincent is 6'8", 280 some pounds. Okay, now he's not a whole lot heavy because you got to keep in mind he is vampire, so he's lost a little bit of, body weight due to dehydration, you could call it. So he's not. I mean, he's huge, but he's not huge by his horde form standards. Okay. So big dude getting drugged down the stairs by Heinrich, who's like a little old man kind of. I mean, he's not like severely old by any means, but he's a little old man dragging him down the stairs. Help, guys! And they stick him.
Takes a team of you.
Ends up taking about the whole group to throw him in the back of his Lincoln Navigator, which is what the whole coterie showed up in.
Was that before or after you guys heard sirens?
This is as we're hearing the sirens to get him
Evan
hidden.
had called the police department reporting you as a
Yes,
break.
and this is Jessica's second time of real events with the coterie. So this is her second impression of how the coterie works.
Yeah.
So exactly. So Jessica, here's Jessica seeing this gargantuan of a guy getting towed
Why
off,
is he stake?
Steak.
Why is there a stake in him?
putting him in the back of his Lincoln Navigator. At the time they shut the gate,
Yeah.
the cops show
Cops
up.
show up.
The cops show up. They're like, "Is everybody with you?" Blah blah blah. Asking all the
And
standard
they're
questions.
separating them out, and they put them all in like the
Separating them out.
Yeah.
And then they
And then
come
Ringo,
to
what
Ringo.
happened? What happened, Ringo? They asked you a question, and what did you tell them?
You
Well,
motherfucker.
It was going okay. That the cop was a little suspicious because he's like, I just
Jason, I
people.
told him that Ringo was under that. What's his face was in the back of the car.
Just in case you look at the back of our car, I believe was how that started.
Yeah.
Just be advised, there's a person with a stake sticking out of his heart.
In the back,
Is like, he motions for the other deputy to go take a look. Deputy looks and it gets wide eyed,
What the fuck?
opens the door, and then he puts you guys immediately under arrest. Oh.
is there anybody else missing? I just our buddy in the back of his rigged steak.
From a DM standpoint, I just was like, oh no.
I went to Aaron after that exact game, actually, as I was cleaning up the stuff. After that game, I asked him, dude, just between you and me as a DM, because I've DM'd a lot of games, and I just saw the look on your face. Tell me that you, how, on a scale of 1 to 10, how bad was that tap dancing you just had to do to not kill everybody? Because I'm seeing, how does Aaron not put you all in a prison cell waiting for daylight to come streaming through it to, blast you with sunlight? How the hell do you get out of this?
But I pulled it out of my ass because
Oh my God.
the vampires controlled the EMS at night. And so what ended up happening is you guys did indeed do that, but then you a call into Ardog, who then called through his contacts, because DCPD ain't Alexandria PD.
No, best DM tap dance I've seen.
And
Hands down, improv.
and so the main hero of that one was the paramedic who came in and basically started, and the other Venture came in force. So the Venture came in to basically dominate and rearrange thoughts, because they still had the girl on the bed, dead in a weird way, and they weren't even aware of that, because the Supernaturals were trying to keep that under wraps, right? The vampires were specifically. So the paramedic came and basically is like, this man's still alive. Feeling, it's still has a heartbeat. Come on, let's go. We gotta get him. And they put him on the gurney, pulls him out in the back, and gets him in, suits him up.
He's
And he's just like,
I think I checked
what the
it.
fuck did you guys do? So you guys had so some favors were pulled and some memories erased, and then everything was as it was. But they still had a dead body that they had to they had to justify and change in a believable way, so that it still accounts for the death, so that people don't think the person's still alive, and it kind of went from there. But yeah, that was a very interesting. That was one of those how, oh man, I gotta think of this one, because that's
Not gonna lie, that was a bad session. I tried to convince the
I thought it
cops
was
to show
perfectly
up.
fine. I had a lot of fun.
I
It was fun.
remember
It was
why
fun.
I was backseat on that one too, because I had just learned Obfuscate from Oracle Cindy, Fade to Black, and spent my time there. So I was sitting there genuinely thinking that Aaron was going to have 4 other players roll up new characters, and Ward was the only one who was going to survive because he wasn't there.
Yeah.
That was amazing.
I thought that was going to be
Publicity.
with the main.
I tried to convince the cops that showed up that we were police. Of course, I am police. I have a badge and stuff, but we're not from that jurisdiction. And they're like, "Oh, well, how did you get here before we did?
Why
what
are you
doing
here?"
Yeah, why didn't you
And I was
coordinate?
like,
Why didn't you coordinate with us?
Damn it! I didn't think you'd ask that question.
oh well.
Yeah, we definitely made you guys think on your feet in that one too. So that was fun. Yeah.
Ringo, you motherfucker.
So enters the house. The cold presence. So the other thing too is you actually kind of got the feeling that the ghost of your great grandniece was there
That is true.
and
Yeah.
was the one that led you up the stairs.
Yep.
And then she would also make a appearance
She will
later
make
as
appearance,
well, which
yep.
is the next part to this, because the coterie. So the next session, you guys are focused on Michelle, You had been picked up at a stretch of warehouses by the airport. You guys basically decided to go there, and you're searching. You got narrowed down to like a 2-block radius or whatever, and you're looking. But then he sees her ghost standing in front of one, and then just basically walks through the door into that location. She is actually a wraith.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the major sense of urgency that we picked up earlier, though, was a phone call
from the mom, because you gave her your card.
Where's my baby?
My baby has gone missing again, but has not come back.
What?
And so you're starting to think, and then you put 2 and 2 together.
Well, no, he actually asked a series of questions, and one of them was, when was the last time you seen her? And that was, well, at the hospital when you sent her home with the Uber driver.
When the senator picked her up and never brought her back.
That's right, yeah.
She was calling the cops, or calling him, because like they took my baby and like give her back. The cops have her or whatever. Like the senator took her.
Senator took her again, yeah.
Yeah, and so the cops have her at this police department or something. You got to give her back, but he knew where he had sent her.
Just like went shades of white because you knew that it was the Uber driver that was the case for this missing cases.
Oh my God! One of the things we were texting about back and forth was me betting Rusty whether you would eat a chicken nugget or not, and vomit it up because you forgot that you can't eat food, and you took her to like McDonald's or something. Like,
that's right. You took her to get food.
You're in the drive-thru, and I'm texting Rusty like, wonder if he's gonna eat a chicken nugget.
Dude, so many conversations.
It's gonna be great too.
So that kicks off kind of the final part to this storyline, where you guys basically engage with evidence. You kind of find out the Uber driver's, Uber number. You find out who it is, and you guys found this warehouse. You called our dog to notify him that you had him in a building. You're pretty sure he's there because you could hear the screams. Remember, you could hear Tamika's screams coming from presumably the third floor, the top floor of this warehouse. And so you were like, we need to move now. He's like, wait for backup. You guys were like, nope.
I was fine with waiting.
Yeah.
But
you guys
Vincent was not.
Made a decision.
Yeah, that was a Vincent decision. As many will be after this session.
Okay, I guess
this
we go.
2-session period
we're doing this.
of the first finale.
Jenkins.
But yeah, you guys end up, going upstairs in 2 different ways, and then Jessica stays downstairs, and that would be important later. So talk about that battle. Like, how did you guys think about that battle? Because that was that was an interesting one, because it was a lot of mind fuckery. It was a lot of, he, for his part, he does have an ace up, Evan being the serial killer, does have an ace up his sleeve for hand-to-hand combat, for sure. But he's also very mental because he's ended up being a Malky. So he fucked with you guys hard because he basically had half of you guys frenzied.
Sure. So when the initial battle ensued, what started it is, I pause that. What I have to state in the very beginning, those of you who do not know, Vincent's background comes from back in the Prohibition days. He was second in line to become a major mob boss, second to his father. His father's brother actually was initially the mob boss. However, due to the rest of the families found he was skimming from the books, cheating the rest of the families, yada yada yada. They dethroned him and put Vincent's father in the mob boss seat instead. Well, that really fucked over his cousin Tommy. Thomas was a very, very power hungry, take no shit kind of guy, but he's very rough. He's very violent. He did a lot of really shitty things to people. Still, yeah. Apparently still is. We'll get to that in a second. But when his father was dying, or let's just say dead, it was Vincent who was supposed to take over the family and be seat as the mob boss. Well, Vincent's cousin Tommy didn't like that. Instead, what he did was one night he came home and ambushed his family. And when Tommy came home, when Vincent came home, he came home to a cracked open door, walked in, found his wife and children tied up. Tommy proceeded to slaughter his wife and children in front of him and did other heinous acts to his children. That is what gave Vincent his soft heart towards children, because he watched his own children die, and like I said, other very, very horrible, heinous acts done to them, including but not limited to even rape. So that happened right in front of him, and not necessarily by Tommy, but by Tommy and his gang. So when Vincent had been almost bled out, shot multiple times, was barely hanging on by whatever breath of life he had left in him, his uncle, Remy DeLuca, came in and saved his life by what he thought by killing the rest of Tommy and his gang and embracing Vincent and making him become a Bruja. That's one of the things that stuck with Vincent was family, which is why he calls his coterie his family. That's who he protects you. He looks after you no matter what. But he has a very, very soft heart for children especially.
And Tamika, for her part, is teens,
but still a child.
Right.
So Vincent has a soft spot for children, but also those of like innocent, which is why he takes a liking very, very, very much to our dog's assistant, because to Vincent, Sabrina is an innocent. That's how she holds herself. That's how she held herself. That's how she portrayed herself, and that's how he thought of her as, which is why he had that bond with her. You know, like every time he sees her, he gives her a hug. Same thing with Riley. Riley is another perfect example. To Vincent, Riley is a victim.
So you just wanted to go in to rescue her.
So that was Vincent's first thought, was he needs to rescue this child.
Yeah, so
no
you guys
matter
race
what.
upstairs.
So he races upstairs.
And then basically you guys get a dementation bomb that goes off, sending you into an immediate, frenzy. After I think you resisted.
I resisted for a little while.
The problem, and this is from a DM standpoint, this is me kind of highlighting, in a way, something that you guys needed to kind of focus on better as a
coincidentally why I have it.
Which was that you had no way to counter obfuscate, which is a clan discipline. So basically, he could hide. He could even do things blatantly, and he has a good chance that you won't see him, even if he's blatant about it, which this was.
Right.
And you didn't. So it was like you're fighting an invisible enemy. That's basically just all they have to do is throw down there. Think of them like emotion bombs that are trying to throw you guys into frenzy. And if you guys frenzy, there's different effects of the frenzy, but it's one of two desired effects. Either one, he runs away and then he's left with less vampires and he can deal with less vampires, or two, they frenzy and kill each other, which is even better, right? And so he, because then he gets to deal the rest of the way with continuing, because he was in the middle of warping Tamika's bones, basically, to start the kind of ritual. And then Ward also was there.
Well, I did use a ritual to attempt to track him down, which is how we knew he was. The call was coming from inside the house, so to speak. Mm-hmm. Was before we started getting hit with the dementation. I used the ritual, burned the ribbon. Did a little chanty chant, and as I'm floating around the rafters trying to scope out the place from above, and saw the glowing trail of this person that I was tracking, the killer, whose name I knew, so whatever. And it was in this building, and it basically just led nowhere. Yeah. So it was like, oh shit, he's here still somewhere. It's not something that I could use to actively track him continuously. Once he was there, it was like, the trail ends. He's here. Yeah. Right. But from there, then we started getting hit with the ghoulish laughter. They found Tamika. They were banging on the metal door, trying to get her.
There's like a metal constructed kind of cage on the third floor that didn't belong there.
No, that's not true. Yeah, they stepped in
Yeah.
and got trapped in the damn metal room,
Yeah, well, yeah.
which I
So
wrote down.
Ringo was always focused on her.
Yeah. Well, so what happened is, as
Ringo
we
was
went
up
up,
there too.
you went into you flew up when
He went
one
into
of the
Fox
different rooms.
Frenzy.
You got into Fox Frenzy.
So he ran down the
Ran.
stairs past Heinrich
Then
on the
Vincent
stairwell. He
went
threw into a berserk rage.
Frenzy.
And so the only one he saw was you and Tamika. And so his focus shifted towards
Yeah.
a murderous intent towards Tamika.
And I managed to.
She was still
shake-
handcuffed to a pipe inside the steel room.
I managed to
No.
shake off the dementation.
All the while, Evan's there, somewhere in the shadows, just
Yeah.
like
I'm like, fuck, I
watching
can't
this.
see
And
him.
like,
I
how
gotta
can
get
I
this
affect
girl.
this?
So, and I went into
He
this
did.
container, managed to get her off the chains, and run out and down the stairs.
Evan
And-
gave chase.
Evan gave chase and
Warped you.
warped me.
So he had vicissitude, which was a power that he could do all the way up to bone crafting, where he could do all kinds of things, and he did to multiple players in the stairwell. Like the majority of the action actually happened in that stairwell, the
Yeah.
southern stairwell. So you guys are all in the stairwell finding it, and meanwhile Jessica's at the bottom floor. And she's like kind of hearing all this stuff happening, and she's like, "Oh, there's a fight going on." Kind of getting your
Yeah.
taser ready,
And the
you're-
reason I had stayed down because I was at the car and I thought there is a chance
He doubled
that if
back.
somebody doubled back to the car and tried to get away. So I was there.
The Uber car,
kinda keep
the
an
Uber
eye
car
out.
was in
That's right.
the cargo. Yeah,
Yes.
Because
and,
her and Heinrich were down in the
Because
garage.
Heinrich
and
had
disabled it.
disabled it. No,
Yeah.
Heinrich had disabled it, and I was standing guard to see if somebody would come
and
and
then
try to take it.
Heinrich went up the stairs, the northern stairwell where we ran into you.
But that's why
fleeing.
Heinrich was delayed. Right, he was coming up the stairwell as I was fleeing. Was because
Yes.
he had stayed to disable the car.
And so Jessica, unbeknownst to her, was rolling for perception alertness to try and see if she could see, but the hunter was also trying to find Tamika, unbeknownst to you guys. So,
And I would not have
chaps.
recognized him regardless.
Right, because you hadn't met him, but you would have
Right.
seen,
I would have seen
an
that.
elderly black gentleman walk through with a glowing bat
And just my type, too.
and other weapons, including a
You like the long
shotgun.
bat thing?
He had a
Yeah,
full
I'll do it.
shotgun and then a series of other weapons, and he basically was rolling in heavy and heading on a beeline straight for Tamika, using his own powers. So anyway, so the characters all go in there. Half of it's trying to keep Vincent from doing damage to Tamika. So Ringo's almost trying to fight off Evan, and then also trying not to have Vincent do something he's going to ultimately and invariably regret once he comes to.
Yeah.
And so he's trying to juggle all these things. Well, unfortunately, you drop, right?
Well, yeah, so I'm running down the stairway. He hit me once with vicissitude, broke my leg, I managed to heal it, and kept on going down. And he jumped the railing and landed in front of me, if I remember. And he hit me with vicissitude again and exploded my chest. I was down to crippled. So I was -5, pretty much couldn't do anything. But I'm still basically trying to hold him off the best I can.
It's a
And
flesh wound.
Yeah.
and
I didn't
I'm
hear
like, you know. So I'm in dire straits, and that was when Hunter comes up the stairs,
Yep.
and I see him there with a shotgun.
With
I
a
say him
shotgun.
take aim, and like, shoot him, god damn it!
Yep.
And,
so he has dragon breath rounds because he
Yeah.
has the background arsenal for hunters, which allows him to have actually the same thing that Scott would get, Steve would get for his character later. But he basically has like access to special munitions. So in this case, he has dragon breath rounds, basically like a flamethrower shotgun in a way, with a straight flame that just burps out, shoots out, and he uses that to devastating effect to a couple of different players.
Oh god.
And ultimately, and then he uses True Faith on you to restrain you and snaps you out of. No, he drops you. I
He dropped me, which
dropped
is
you
what
with the
dropped me
damage.
out of Berserker.
Yeah.
Family.
And
Or
then
frenzy.
and you collapse. Well, so then Evan fled, and Jessica at this point is trying to figure out what's going on. Goes up the stairs, runs into him, tries to engage him, but she's not built for combat in any way, shape, or form. And basically tries to bite him, and Evan uses his vicissitude to turn her head backwards and then proceeds to basically start diablerizing her. We were literally a round away when the hunter just so happens to have been, and this is all on the rounds, like we did this all legit. The hunter came down and he had his sparkly bat, his holy bat, and just basically bats the head of Evan, which knocks him off. And then Evans has to stop that, and he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna kill this human easily."
Yeah.
And he tries to use like dementation, but because of the true faith, the hunter is completely immune. So that's a wasted action. Hunter goes up, lines up, caves in his head. By this time, he also has Tamika because he grabbed Tamika from you, from Ringo,
And
and
yeah.
then at the very end, you come up and you do what?
Well, so Vincent
is the other
gets up after the hunter had kind of immobilized him, and he was still frenzied and was going to go after them. And so after he had kind of battled me over Tamika, because I distracted him from going after her, I had used all my willpower points, so I ended up burning a permanent willpower to like do a last ditch effort where I bit his leg and managed to incapacitate him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, as the hunter was going away, you gave him what?
I gave him a card.
I gave him a card and said, "We're not what you think we are.
Uh-huh.
I swear to you, you basically caught Vincent on a bad hair day. Let's chat."
That was actually right after, though, that I left the last.
Oh yeah, that was.
So there was a negative. Yes.
Yes.
Let's talk
yes,
about
yes,
that then,
yes,
Ward.
after all that, it was.
Well, Ward, that was Ward.
Heinrich and Ward got to the top of the stairs. All of the flesh crafting and Tamika shit had already happened, and you guys were basically at the bottom of the stairs. We're like, God damn, we were just at the... Okay, so we start running down the stairs. We come upon... You had been dropped at one point, and then he had been dropped, and everybody seemed to be getting dropped, but there was no Evan around. But there was the guy with the shotgun, and we saw a smoldering Vincent. So I shot a stake off at him to try and skewer him.
You miss.
Yeah, and
then
I
he
missed.
flamethrowers you.
Lightly flamethrower
yeah. It
me.
was a light.
I did not
light
take it in the
sin.
face hard as this guy did.
No.
And then kind of at that point assessed my
Dragon
options.
breath to the face.
But I remember because he was like, okay, I've got a shotgun in one hand and I gotta, I'm reloading this thing or whatever, and I got Tamika in the other, and I gotta carry her out. And so he was trying to waffle between like defending himself and actively attacking us and trying to back out. And so in that interlude is when I was like, I don't want to get shotgunned, and I failed my first shot. I'm gonna stand down, and then Mr. Chit Chat.
And then I jumped over the railing down because they were on the landing below me. So I jumped over the railing, got in between them, and basically said, "Wait, stop!"
Yeah.
He's not.
So I told Ward to knock it off.
Anyway, and he kind of was like, "What?" And he's looking at it, but he knew that he was protecting the whole time Tamika, and like ultimately passed him directly over to the hunter, and so Gerald Miller, and so he knew something was up, and he was kind of like, "This is not what." Yeah, sure, okay, I can buy that. And he gave me a card. Okay, so he escapes. Hunter escapes, and there is a. Head caved in but healing Evan, and then you guys end up staking him, which leads us to a major event. So at the very end of it, you guys call up our dog, let him know you have it. He's basically like, I've talked to the prince, don't touch him anymore, you have him staked, good job. This part's, you guys are going to be the heroes coming out of this, I swear. We are going to have, we have a lot of questions. We don't know how he was operating freely within the Camarilla territory like this. He's an independent. Someone had to have been helping him, keep him off the radar, or keeping him on the books, which you'll find out later. But we have a lot of questions to ask, and so keep him there. And so at the end of the session, everybody agreed, okay, we're good. So then people start peeling off and kind of doing exploration. They find some cool stuff. Ward finds
a black gem,
a black diamond. That is not insignificant in size, supported by a 3 looking like wood carvings that have been carved into fangs. Lots of arcane markings all across, or profane.
Journal.
And a journal that was almost like written by an insanity. Why has it got to be black? Because it does. Like, that's why.
Because every other diamond is clear, and so wouldn't be that special if it was just a random clear diamond.
It could have been blood diamond, I guess, but no. No, the blackest heart. So basically, the characters kind of all split off and kind of taking advantage of that situation. I will openly say, Vincent decides to end the situation and not have the serial killer potentially, use his leverage to negotiate or do anything else in the future. Decides to diablerize him anyway. And so basically he gets high on diablerie. The characters all come back and find a disembodied stake lying there with a bunch of ashes and a really high-looking, cracked-out-looking Vincent who barely knows his face is. Huh?
That's how we started the session as players.
We
walked in the door thinking, okay, we finished the last session as heroes.
We're going to all get booms.
Yeah.
And our dog was there.
And as a GM, as a GM, I will say it was a curveball. Because everybody at the end of the last session did agree not to. And so I had to, I was like, all right, well, it's going to be a parade session. It's going to be an anime.
But we went offline and did our exploration offline.
Yes. And so, and what ended up happening is then our dog came and was like, where is he? And why is he cracked out? And, oh, you got to be fucking kidding me. You guys did it. You did it. As the prince pulls up and says, where's my prize? And basically that whole thing kicks into for lack of a better word, a trial.
But Jessica was innocent because she was still in torpor at the time it happened. So
yeah,
she had the greatest excuse.
Half the party was like unconscious or like just like barely like stringing along. Like
I was completely crippled and
I wasn't even in the room.
I was not innocent in this
No.
case.
I was down
I was going to go into that.
Dude, Heinrich was so not innocent at all.
No, he was not, and he got minorly punished compared to what you got.
That is true.
So in the end, though, it started off with you guys just awaiting that nerve-wracking wait before you're going to go and see the principal, who could kill you. You guys basically had seen Ardog go in before you. And when you guys entered the room with the sheriff presiding, all of the elders and all of the key positions all sitting around in a half moon kind of situation, you guys see a completely bloodied and unconscious and broken body of Ardog there. And you guys basically don't know what, like, set the tone. It was basically like, oh shit. Like, he even got this. And what would come to find out immediately, the sheriff just announced that he claimed carnal right to have you guys tried as individuals instead of as a coterie. And under doing so, he basically takes it out of the flesh and accepts punishment in the form of like aggravated damage that took him to basically incapacitated. He had to be hauled off, and then you guys were each questioned on the events and how your involvement was. And because of the mitigating factors, you guys had basically, you had a little problem with the staking of Vincent in Alexandria. But by and large, you guys had succeeded. You did find the serial killer and ultimately would destroy him in kind of the worst possible way. But the prince didn't seem to care too much about that. The prince seemed to have his hands tied, if you recall. He was just pissed that he lost his opportunity to question and find out who a traitor amongst them was. And by this point, you guys knew that the prince was he's very war-minded. He's very much on the offensive now against the Sabbat. And this started in Sabbat territory and then quietly migrated over to Camarilla territory. So he was definitely very concerned about that. But he still turned it to his advantage in any way he could. So by vote, they ended up not ending your life if you used your boon. Now the others still were involved in apprehending and were still granted the boons, except for Heinrich and Vincent, who were forced to use their boons on basically sparing their life.
So with that said, I just want to back up to. So when everybody else went through their trial with the prince and was questioned and they got their boons and yada yada, what I have to mention is a couple of things. Number one, when Vincent came in and he saw our dog, he legitimately had to make a roll per Aaron to not go into frenzy. And the only reason why he made it is he actually made one success. He did not go into a frenzy because to Vincent, that was not his fault. It was not our dog's fault. And he basically screamed in his face that the coterie had nothing to do with it, and neither did our dog, and that if anybody were to take responsibility for it, it would be Vincent. Instead, the prince did give a punishment of serving the Camarilla for, well, first of all, he had to take the vicissitude.
Yeah, he had to. He was forced to learn vicissitude.
Up to bonecraft at least.
Mm-hmm. Why is that?
So that Vincent could, in servitude of the Camarilla, fix those affected by bonecraft in the war against the Sabbat.
Because the Sabbat are pretty much the only ones that know vicissitude, right?
Right.
So, unless you get it through these means, because you ain't going to have one taught, especially not in this war, area. You're basically he was literally given a phone,
Right.
and he said this will not ring more than twice.
Right.
You will answer it, and then I don't care what you're doing, you're going to respond to this because it's me calling you with somebody that needs fixing.
The other side effect to that was no longer
For how long?
For 50 years.
50 years. You were going to be in servitude.
So the other side of that fact, the effect of that was now my primogen is responsible for anything that happens.
Yeah, any misgivings any missteps you make are now a direct. So this was him playing. So he got outvoted for your destruction, but in return, he could set the terms to punish one of the primogen who voted to spare you.
Right.
And basically, it's like, okay, sure, we'll spare him, but now you're going to take his place if he fucks up again.
Right.
That's how that played out.
So, with all that in mind, now.
And who are you fully bloodbound to by?
Let me pause that real quick and to let you know that it can be argued on several different levels that the reason why Vincent did what he did, it could be argued that he wanted vicissitude, which I got to tell you, in vampire world, that is not the case.
Yes, it is.
Vicissitude is a fucking disease.
No,
look it up.
We haven't established
It's
that.
very powerful. Don't get me wrong.
No,
it is very
dude,
powerful,
come
and
on.
it is awesome. But if you look again, if you look at the backstory of my character, children, and he killed as part of his family. He morbidly disfigured a member of his own family, his own actual blood. He was fucking irate that this person would be slapped on the wrist and be let
But you
go.
knew that wasn't the case. I mean, the prince would have destroyed him or provided him as a boon to someone else to Diablo.
We would have,
And then they would have been on the hook.
ultimately
to
that could have been it. Absolutely, absolutely. That was a big percentage
not-
of what could have happened.
Well, that's huge because he's not. I mean, what?
However,
game
learning what we didn't know then,
In any
but
way.
learning know now that the prince is not exactly on the up and up either. So again, I didn't know that part of it then. I'm not saying anything like as that
But
is
this
a bonus.
directly relates to the war with the Sabbat, which is
That is
the
true.
one thing that he has been consistent on is his hatred, which we'll get into why later. But his hatred of the Sabbat is why he does what he does,
And that is totally 100% true.
Mhm.
So with all that and Vincent knowing that he
Vincent knows
fucked
that.
up, and he even screamed at him for his own coterie, his family, to be spared because they had no knowing, minus Heinrich, of what he was about to do. He basically kind of, I don't want to say threw himself at him to want final death, but more of a, hey, if anybody needs to take the punishment of anything, it was me because I made that decision. Instead, he actually ended up fucking making Vincent pretty badass by taking the vicissitude discipline, but also in a roundabout way, it does one of two things. It does a couple things. Number one, if Vincent needs to disappear for a little while, hey, he's doing shit for the Camarilla, and
we do need to hurry, dude.
Cade
They
will
gotta
have to
move
step
serious.
in. But the other part of it was that,
We're only on page 1
yeah, sorry.
of 4.
But the other part of that was
And we haven't even
at
done
the end.
trial.
At the end of him killing the serial killer, he saw his niece as a wraith, saying thank you, and going forward. And he hasn't pulled at that storyline either. But
Right.
all of that kind of came into fruition, and not saying it makes it what he did any better. It just makes it that, quite honestly, he was keeping to his backstory, but also being that loose cannon that he's always been. So there's that.
Which is why he's now fully bloodbound to the Brujah Primary.
Which is also why he's fully bloodbound to the Brujah Primary.
And
Yeah, and any screw-ups, you won't even see the punishment.
For real. But that's also why he's on his toes.
But honestly, I mean, if we want to talk like metagaming, that doesn't affect you at all, right? Unless I decide it affects you.
Sure.
Same with the
True.
50 years.
True.
So, anyway, so we're moving on. You guys.
Hold on. I would like to talk about Heinrich's reaction to the trial.
Okay.
If you don't
It
mind.
is a big part. Go ahead.
This is a big character development for Heinrich because he didn't like the way the coterie was being treated as pawns early in the campaign. He developed a mistrust for the prince that he did not communicate to anyone for a long time, and this got worse as the campaign progressed. And it started off by mistrusting Reggie. He didn't like Reggie's sort of crass demeanor, and it felt like Reggie was just a tool of the prince, sending us off to do whatever, get blown up, get our arms fucking ripped off, and whatever else.
It may have
And so
started off that way.
when he saw Reggie there all beat up at the trial, Heinrich realized he just totally misjudged the guy. So Heinrich's reaction to the trial was a mixture of shame and rage, because in the stairwell with Vincent, he had determined that the right thing to do is to diablerize this fucked up vampire, to delete that from existence. And I mean, he was bothered by Evan in a serious way. And so he felt like that the coterie had done the right thing, even though it countermanded what the prince had asked for.
Sure.
But this was a point where he was starting to turn and decide that, well, maybe we should see other angles besides whatever the prince wants to do.
Yeah, because the way I played this was that during the when you guys were in the stairwell and it was offline, we took it and I had everybody doing what they do, and I took what people were doing. And I was like, okay, there's a chance that they're going to see see motivation, because at the time Vincent was messed up, right? He was in crippled too, so he was basically on the ground, like crawling almost, So it's like they could see if he's looking at Evan like a cupcake, right? He just wants to devour that shit, and if they're looking. But so I had everybody kind of secretly roll. They didn't know what they were rolling for, but perception and alertness, versus his sort of passive stealth, if you will. And, the only one that noticed was Heinrich, legit. And so then that's when Heinrich looks at him, looks at Evan, kind of figures out, but then decides to kind of turn the blind eye anyway. And that's why, ultimately, you would also, the two other things you guys lost was your deputy hound status.
Yep.
Whereas the others were allowed to keep it. So because because of Reggie, you guys weren't all punished the same. It was just, everybody was individual. For in front of the Camarilla law. So, but yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, that was basically it. Just explaining how the trial really put a wedge between Heinrich and almost the Camarilla, really.
Yeah, certainly the prince and the sheriff, who were brothers, right? They were both Kennedys, and you guys, you do know, or you could surmise that because of the way it voted and the outcome, that there are some people of the Primogen that definitely saw the value of what Vincent did, and that wanted that to be basically this be the punishment, because it probably would have been happening anyway. And instead of just giving the prince kind of leverage over someone else, it kind of forces this issue, but it sort of benefits somebody that they see as being kind of for the greater good. For lack of a better term, insofar as you can say that with Vampire Kind, I guess. So, anybody else have any kind of big takeaways from that trial? it was pretty pivotal. It was definitely that was a last minute shift on my part, because I mean it was going to be a full like speech on how you guys were. The Prince was basically going to lick your butt, you know, and you guys were
I
going
love
to
a good
provide
butt
it.
licking.
Straight up, man. Spread the cheeks and go for the milk dud. So yeah, it's it is what it is. You like that? You got the visual. You're welcome. You're welcome. So
God. Tongue punch to the balloon knot.
that's how it goes, man. So you guys end up, that's what was the end of that storyline. You came out of it, Vincent was pretty pissed off at the whole situation, and, was now tethered to this phone line. Ultimately, from a DM standpoint, like, I never really, like, manifested as a hindrance. I actually used it, man, like, if Rusty couldn't make a game, I had him called away. So it's kind of like just a method for me to remove him if I needed to.
And it actually is going to play in the future.
Sure.
As well. So.
Yeah, he could use a boon to remove that requirement if he so chose. Otherwise, he has it remaining over his head. So, new day, new hound. So with Reggie, who also got demoted at the time, and he basically disappeared. Nobody knew what happened to him. You'd find out later. But now there's a Lieutenant Hill that basically comes into the forefold.
Tabitha Hill?
Tabitha Hill. And she basically tasked the coterie with, trying to do a low-hanging fruit, clearing out a Sabat gang headquarters that's actually established itself in rural DC. So you guys stake out the location after using a new certain surveillance van.
And
Isn't it bringing out the feels though?
Yes.
Shaggin' wagon. Yeah.
Straight up, man. So why don't you tell us about the shaggin' wagon there, Ben?
Oh, it was a pretty rad, like GMC or Ford van. It was all tricked out with surveillance gear. Mm-hmm. Had a beautiful airbrush of like a kind of a vampire-y night scene with a train involved and like some dragons and stuff. It was really epic.
So 80s.
Grateful Dead are back on tour, guys!
Yeah, I was about to get there. So you guys had this van, but unfortunately you guys botched the being incognito and trying to do a drive-by, surveillance drive-by. And the lookouts basically looked at you guys and caught on pretty quick, forcing you guys to it was one of those times where you decided to just go for it, and then you're like, wait, we should have come up with a better plan.
Yes, this is about this time Jessica was trying to assert to the coterie, we need to plan because otherwise we go off
It
the
goes
rails.
way off rails real
One
fast.
prison went so much better as far as knowing what we were going to show up and do.
Yeah.
So did several other situations. As a result,
You
so
did
tried,
learn.
yeah.
But this was not the time when you learned.
So it turned into a big, let's just fuck shit up.
Yeah, because you guys were like, we need a good win now.
They already know
we
we're
just
here.
had a fucking trial, almost died.
Ah.
But you guys did go in, and ultimately you guys parked and then ran up, basically fucked them all up. You took out the gang members, but then it turned out that there were actually Sabat there, and that started a whole thing where you guys fought each one kind of independently. And Heidi was there at this time, so she'd come back, and she was pretty pissed off with how you guys handled that too. You guys were like, whatever. And then you guys basically subdued the Sabat members, and there were kind of a multitude of them. There was a really big kind of Bruja anti-tribute that kind of went toe to toe. Was designed to go toe to toe with Vincent, so it's two kind of combat monsters. Then you had a Nosferatu that was really into the rats,
Which
and
is
all
what
this.
got her interested in animalism.
Yeah,
seeing
so
what he could
Jessica
do.
saw that, and you're like, wow, and like you guys got swarmed. You guys haven't used that power. But it is always in your arsenal and something that you could consider in the future, depending on what you need it for.
It's where we got the rat.
It is. The rat is there, and still.
What do you mean we?
We. Yeah. Jessica's like,
I assume it's the mascot at this point. It's the coterie mascot.
got to paint it black. It's the Black Sun. Is it male? Yes.
Did you paint my rat again?
So.
Close stop painting my rat.
But yeah, so you're end up, and that one's more of a role playing interaction between the two of you, and then sort of devolved very quickly into a quick combat, but you were able to ultimately subdue him. And then the La Sombra that was out, that tried to get out, and Heidi dropped him in the parking lot. but then failed to stake him. So she went in to go check on with you guys, and so the Sombre was able to heal up pretty quickly and then bolted, trying to go into the adjacent houses to go feed, where you guys ultimately would find him. So it's Ward and someone and
Ward
Vincent.
and Vincent actually
And
ran
you found
off
him
after
2 houses or 3 houses down, feeding on a woman, presumably going to drain her dry, but you saved her by taking him out. Well, you really wanted to take him out, but you did save her, and then ultimately she would become your ghoul.
Yeah, I made
Ward.
the decision to, well, shit, the neighbors all saw us enter, and now we've got this woman who she's dying. What do we do? I don't know. I'm not really
Well,
authorized to make a ghoul, but
yeah, and-
I gotta make a call.
And the
that's the only
deputy
way to
hound
save her.
that you guys worked with was like, nope, we no survivors. Like, this is not worth it. We're just terminating.
Yeah.
So that was sort of a humane thing.
I probably would have opted to, like, okay, we could let her die and it would not have been as big of a deal, but there had been witnesses to us enter, and it'd be a little harder to explain, so it seemed like the logical thing to do at the time was to save her via ghouling, and she could always be destroyed later, so humane-ish.
So
I have a good note from this
you also-
session.
Lit the building on
What was
fire
that,
on
Ben?
I have a good note from this session. It says, Heidi grapples the kid with a sawed-off and makes fun of him for shooting at a girl.
that would have been upstairs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then walked
'Cause there was
off
a- there was a
making
kid-
him in torpor.
Kid waiting for someone to open the door that had a sawed-off shotgun, and basically she opens the door and then takes a shot, and then she's just like, "What are you doing?" He's like, uh-oh. He's a human. Yeah, I got him fucked up. It was at that time. So yeah, and then the other thing too, you guys met a certain Malkavian anti-tribute that was naked upstairs, just coming off a high from drugs. Seemed very prophetic. So you would run into
Shauna.
Yep. You'd run into her, and basically you guys subdued all of them. You didn't actually destroy any of these. You were able to stake all of them, and then were able to turn them in successfully with to the Camarilla.
And I saved the life of the Nosferatu's ghouled rat.
Yeah,
I still have him. His name is Scabbers.
Scabbers is with you. And so then, let's see here.
We have groupies.
PC's talk to the prince directly for a side mission to deliver plastic drums to a certain Megadon facility in southwest of Alexandria. PCs were told not to look inside and report in once the task is completed. For her part, Lieutenant Hill seems very apprehensive about this mission, but also doesn't speak much about it, other than to say the PCs need to get it done. So you guys do. You guys deliver it to this facility out in the middle of kind of nowhere, really. It's definitely heavily forested, although the immediate forest is all cleared, and it's surrounded by very advanced security. So, but you guys have some interesting conversations, because you guys basically haul in this cargo. You have no idea what it is. At least now, at the time that we're talking about. You would find out later, you think.
We'd have
Pretty good idea.
suspicions.
Well, I was going to say,
later.
we had our suspicions, but
Anyway.
we didn't know.
Right.
Like concrete evidence, we did not know.
Yeah. So what did you suspect it was at the time?
I think we even talked about it at one point being vampires,
Yeah, we did.
but we thought Sabat.
Well,
not
you even thought it might have been the group that you guys had, because one
Exactly.
of them seems especially heavy, which would have been the Bruja that you
Right.
fought.
Yes, and there
there's one that's
were
really
like
light.
5 barrels, 5 people.
Yeah.
It just seemed
Now,
like
that wouldn't necessarily line up, because you would see the
We-
Malkavian later. But there's a
Yes.
reason for that.
We didn't
so I
know
will
that.
tell you now.
So we didn't know that, but we also thought maybe the 5th one was the kid, because there were only 4 Sabbats. So we thought, maybe the 5th one's the kid. And like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But we were still pretty sure it was vampires.
So I will tell you, just because it doesn't really matter now, but was the other members, but because the Malkavian has the, what is it? There's a specific merit that allows it so that you take a lesser punishment. In this case, it was a lesser punishment, just enough to make her not go and die. And she was useful enough to keep alive. So it was actually that little metagaming thing, but just so you know. But it was. Peek behind the curtain there. So yeah, you guys all pull up. Heidi's with you, and there was a little interesting interaction with Heidi and what would be Dr. Brian Taylor, who you meet later. who seems to be the assistant laboratory manager for the Megadon Pharmaceuticals, now Megadon Technologies, on the in the Virginia and DC area. And so pretty high up. And you also noticed what in that area? Standing by.
Well, we saw a certain somebody whose names with black eye roll dancer.
Eye roll dancer.
Yeah, who fit the description of from Jonathan Drake of
Yeah.
the potential
Deathclaw.
Deathclaw.
And sadly, I just now put that shit together tonight.
Well, that's why we're
Really?
doing this, man.
Or you didn't realize that?
Wow.
I didn't think it was him exactly.
Oh yeah. It was
I didn't know if it was.
a Black Spire. We were told that there was a Black Spire Lancer and that most of the other guards were Fomori,
Yeah.
Yep.
which at the time didn't mean anything.
Didn't
to
mean anything.
any
Like,
of
what
our
does that even
characters.
mean?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
And for his part, I mean, Jonathan Drake probably didn't know half of it. He probably just kind of knew a little bit about it,
Right.
enough to be dangerous.
But we did also scope out the security, and with a couple rolls on technology and stuff like that, saw that there were like automated turrets. Heard a drone buzzing around in the
Yep.
sky somewhere.
It was heavily.
Yeah.
Heavily guarded
Yeah, heavily.
and
guarded.
physically guarded.
Which
too.
is actually what set me on the path to negotiating for hackers.
Yeah.
Right.
Because I knew we would need some way to shut down some of that security
Mhm.
in order to have any chance of doing anything with it if we ever came back.
Yep.
I'm sure we will.
That's up to you. It certainly is something that's up to you
Well,
guys. if
we
you
already
want to.
I already turned in that hacking chip.
Yeah, you'd have to get another one. And unfortunately, you guys don't have the Nosferatu from that last.
But we got what we needed on
I
that.
still have a boon from the Nosferatu. I'm just saying.
Probably not up to
It
this
wasn't really
last
a boon
mission.
though. It was a card from Shaniqua Shaquan Willis saying
Boon receiver.
basically her card that we can call on her that we're treated
No,
as
remember when we saved those Nosferatu from that building? I never cast in on that boon. I did not. I don't know who else did, but
I
I know
did.
that Vincent did not.
I did.
So technically, he still has two. Vincent still has two boons, one from the Prince, one from the Nosferatu.
So I didn't interpret it as an actual boon, but anyway.
Well, they specifically said it's a boon from us.
Yeah. So,
You might want to turn in your boon for the prince pretty soon.
yeah. While you can. So yeah, you guys do. You meet that Dr. Brian Taylor. Heidi hits on him and tries to see if he's like, he seems pretty unhappy. Mired in work, which is pretty
life.
consistent with her. With what you guys find out later, the Black Spiral Dancer does sort of come in and sort of look at you guys and observe you pretty closely. But otherwise, you guys deliver and then leave. So the coterie hears chaos on the radio as you guys are returning, and apparently the Sabbat had unleashed a brutal strike across DC. This was a big session. So Elysium is even attacked. DCPD is shot up. The Toreador headquarters, Shadow Records, is completely sacked, and many fall to a set of blood brothers. You guys would come to find out. Attacked and diablerized many of people, including Sabrina's friends, who she sees diablerized right in front of her, and literally she's just left as the High Blood Brothers walk right past her, as if she's not even worth their effort, which leaves a horrible scar on her soul. Lieutenant Hill tasks the coterie with supporting the Nosferatu headquarters to Public Works. PCs arrive to a scorched field of vermin. Which makes sense because if they're attacking Nosferatu, they have the animalism level that can summon tons of rats because it's all these people doing it and they're in the Public Works. So it provides a natural thing, but it also the Nosferatu seem to have or the Sabbat seem to have a counter because they had flamethrowers, literal flamethrowers that they were clearly used and then ditched once the fuel was out, or they were killed, overrun and killed. So. You guys ended up attacking that, beating back a pack, but not before they were able to capture a number of Nosferatu, and then basically made their way, you guys made your way back into the facility, hearing the screams and the fires that had been started, ended up rescuing some Nosferatu ghouls and Nosferatu from the buildings, through some feats of strength and bravery, jumping through the flames that had been engulfing this particular building. And you guys ended up saving them from death. So that's where you guys got those Nosferatu boons from. Let's see here. Players get an Australian favor for their heroism. The coterie surveys the damage to see who attacked and figured the building that you guys had attacked was probably another finger in this attack. So basically, by you doing what you did to the old house, you probably stopped an additional attack. You didn't even know it. Let's see here. So the big task then was to find out where the generals of this offensive were, which ended up from intel being 2 La Sombra twin brothers, the twins. You guys met in episode 1. Though their whereabouts are unknown, they keep shifting. You guys talked to Sabrina, who is racked with fear, sadness, and rage. And so you guys don't have to wait long, though. The next session, you guys basically get word that the Blood Brothers are on the attack again, openly. And so you guys move to intercept them. At the same time, the sheriff had gotten wind of, with your guys' help, actually, about where the twins were, where they were holed up, which is actually in a jazz club or an ex-jazz club.
Because after we were questioning Shauna.
Yeah. And then Heidi gave her drugs. Yes. And then you guys barred the guards from entering. So anyway, you guys got the good intel, and the twin brothers were found, but you guys decided to deal with the Blood Brothers first, which kicks off a massive battle in the streets between you and a whole herd of Blood Brothers, almost ending you guys. That was another really tough fight. I don't know if you guys remember that one. Mm-hmm. That one had me going. But basically, the Blood Brothers had the kind of one up on you guys, and in fact, one of them Heidi had jumped in front to try and take on, and help kind of tank the situation along with Vincent, but was overcome and eventually took out kind of the strongest of the Blood Brothers in a way, just long enough for you guys to regroup because she got diablerized. So that was the first character death, final death that we experienced in the coterie, really. But she was fully diablerized by the Blood Brother, and he was in his high state for a number of rounds. So you guys were able to rally, eventually push them back, and even subdue them. And then you selves diablerized a bunch of them, kept others as as prizes to give to the prince. And you guys hear that there's another mobilized force that's basically surrounding where the twins' jazz club is, where the twins are supposedly held up. So. Excuse me. Now we're moving fast through this, but...
Well, which fight did Sabrina join? Because we had her come with us, and...
She was in
Annihilation.
In that one, yeah.
She was in that one.
That was that was a big turning point for her.
She jumped in and actually diablerized one of them.
She actually wasn't going to go, and then, she was told by Reggie not to go, and we said, no, let's go, you deserve this.
You need to.
She needs to because she was
started
still
her
so
bloodline.
rattled, and
Right.
it basically...
And she changed. That was like, for that whole thing, it changed her, and she became she's brutal now. You've seen her a couple times in different social settings, and every time, she seems to be Team Prince all the way, because her hatred, almost like Heinrich, her hatred of the Sabbat is untenable, really, at this point. So she is definitely full on. She's kind of like, Jessica in a way. Jessica started off being very, much non-combat oriented and has shifted, quite significantly from where she started.
Just a bit.
Yeah. Into not a combat monster, but certainly capable at the very least, right?
I think
and a unique
pushed
combat.
is the right word.
Yeah.
Necessity to survive the coterie.
Yeah, exactly. These guys get in fights. I need to be able to defend myself, which is true.
It's a fight every time we go out.
Pretty much.
To Sabrina's credit, though, she was. Even during that big fight, Vincent had told her, stay behind me until it's time. And before he even got to say anything, she was like, whoop, bam, damn, Sabrina, and
she rolled really well too.
She did really well, exactly.
She spent all of her experience. I had her statted out too. But yeah, she's she's a kind of an upcoming force to be reckoned with as well. She has a lot of political ties too, and she's definitely on the prince's side, and you guys know that openly. She's pretty open about that. And you guys haven't really engaged with her too much on that front, but we'll get into where that is later. So basically, this was a big one though. So the next one is the Battle of the Twins, right? So, the last thing, you did have a vision as you were Diablerizing. Some of you had the vision of another large-sized Brother of Blood that was still outstanding, that was not here in this battle, right? That was sort of like, kind of the prime brother or whatever. That was definitely the one that was, super large, sitting in command center somewhere, unbeknownst to you, and would play a role later. So. Battle at the Twins. Coteries engage a horde of Sabbat flooding into DC. You guys stop them and also end up having to stop an APC, Armored Personnel Carrier, which had been hijacked, an armored personnel from the National Guard that had been brought in for the gang violence, to curb the gang violence. Well, they had been taken over by the Sabbat and basically were running towards the, out of desperation, really, to try and find a way to crack through the perimeter that had already been formed around the Twins Jazz Club to kill the generals, or at least obtain them. So you guys you stop that right before it crashes into the blockade or the perimeter, and the prince basically and the sheriff has moved in everybody around. The sheriff calls a breach. So they all breach into it, led by the sheriff. They go in to engage the Twins. And in the chaos, the Twins come back out. And the prince basically goes up and stops them and basically calls down, for lack of a better term, a literal beam of sunlight that comes in the middle of the night with an extravagant gesture. And he lights them on fire, burns them twice, and then forces them to surrender out of just sheer awe and terror, much to the terror of everybody else around them. So with that then comes the knowledge, so they stake them and they take the Twins away, never to be seen while they're around. You just don't know what's happening to them. Then the prince finds out that his brother, the sheriff, had met the final death at the hands of the Twins during the breach, along with a number of other vampires. That's how nasty the fight was inside the Twins, which is actually something you guys could have done if you guys had chosen to do that, because you guys actually had two choices. You could kind of head off those that are coming in to provide reinforcements, or you can join the perimeter, and you guys decided on, it's closer, we're going to go here and attack these guys. And it's good, because then you didn't have the APC crashing in. It's also a dangerous fight too. But you decided to go the Blood Brother route, and then that led to that. So alternatively, you could have been a part of the perimeter, which would have been the perimeter, and then a breach. You'd have been part of the breach team, which has some nasty parts.
And I think one of the reasons we went after the Blood Brothers is because they were part of the group that had Diablerized the Toreadors in front of Sabrina. So that was one of the reasons we also chose to go after them. Yeah,
it was like personal, but also effective. I mean, you knew that this was a major weapon of the Sabbat in this area. You just knew that. So the prince, for his part, breaks down to the point where the other Primogen have to pull him away and basically squirrel him away. In his grief, he breaks down completely, and then you guys end up, with a severe win, beating back this final assault into, of the Sabbat, and things kind of cool down at that point. You guys receive a boon after that. So then we move into John's game. So it's 10:30 now. We've gone through, and we have so much more to go through. It's kind of interesting. But well, yeah. I mean, you guys want to keep going, or you guys want to call? How you guys feeling?
I have no life.
I'm fine.
We can go for a little bit longer. Tell me when you can.
I'm probably gonna head home.
You're gonna head home?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, and your character doesn't come in for a little bit anyway. Yeah. Not until after. Well, John's part, I mean, could go pretty fast. But, a lot happened.
Yeah, I mean, it's up to you guys. I think we should, if we're going to continue, we probably need to kind of move at a faster pace anyway, at a higher level, like, just hit the highlights kind of thing.
Yeah.
Well, because then we're going to start getting into the sessions that were also recorded after your game.
Right, which we don't necessarily need to even go to. We can stop at that point. Yeah, so, I mean, thanks for coming. It's good.
Thank you. See you next time.
Yeah, dude. So, well,
I'd be okay meeting up for another recap, whether that's the start of the next time we end up playing Vampire, or whether that's just another time in the intermediate.
Hold on, Scott, real quick. Do you guys just want to do that? And I could always just hop on Discord and we can do it fully over Discord.
Yeah, I mean, my thought is that way we don't have to necessarily rush it. I mean, we should still move at a reasonable clip just to get through it, but you know, I mean, even
we
in
need
the
to
next,
talk about the future too.
Yeah,
So,
even in the next 30
what are our
minutes
next
would be
games?
kind of asking a lot at the even at a high pace.
Well, let's just stop it here. We'll end this session, kind of, this recap session for what it is. We'll talk about whether we want to do an additional one. I just thought it might be fun to kind of rehash a lot of the old.
Oh
things
yeah,
and
a lot
all
of
the
things
different
come
that
right,
happened.
remembering things.
But thanks for joining, Ben. I think we're gonna drop off and stop recording because we're gonna talk about the future and what we're gonna do because I'm gonna be taking a break for a while from GMing and lick my wounds and come back at some point in the future. So anyway, hope all is well, man. I mean, you're welcome to hang out, but it's probably gonna be pretty boring for you at this point.
Yeah, cool. I appreciate you guys inviting me. It's nice to go back through some of those old stories.
Yeah.
Good times.
You need to come back, Ben. I miss you.
Ben,
Yeah.
the
What?
just so you know, buddy, the whole rock thing paid off. In the end, it was all for Ward.
You're gonna love that story.
Yeah, Ward can't make vampires. It's one of his flaws that he took. He's got infertile vitae, so he can't make vampires. So the rock, little preview, the gargoyle that showed up at this scene, that's my gargoyle. Can't make him via embrace, but he can make him via science experiment.
Yeah.
So I still owe you an arm
Nice.
for that. You know, Ward definitely considers that a debt. He owes you an arm that werewolf took. So and don't forget too, Erasmo owes you, and I wrote down in my notes, a boon for the value of which shall not exceed 1 human life.
One day I may call upon you for a favor.
No, isn't it 1 vampire life or 10 human lives? I
That
thought it
was
was something like that.
there was another one like that later on that he made, another deal that wasn't me making that particular deal, which started off the bartering.
It was with the 3 wise men.
Oh, yes.
It was
I owe
barter-
somebody some lives, I think it's.
Yeah,
Heinrich
three
must-
wise men had another bargain with him.
Dude, Heinrich must have been so enthralled with the concept of bartering on the basis of a currency based on okay, well, what's it worth in human lives versus what's the exchange rate? Are we talking an Italian guy? Is this a Russian dude? How many lives? Or a kid? What's the value of a life?
Yeah.
He would be into that. He would definitely be into that.
Stocks and exchanges commissioned on human life.
Yeah, well, no,
Oh, yeah.
I actually.
Vampire stock market.
I know it might have been boring, so sorry to some of you, but I thought it was actually pretty fun to kind of go back over and hear the
It
story.
was awesome.
So anyway, thanks, Ben. I'm gonna sign off here, and we'll definitely let you know when we're doing part 2 if we want to do a part 2, folks. But we'll talk to you later.
Yeah.